The silent applause problem. What if every compliment you ever received existed only in the air after you left the room? What if the words that could have healed you, lifted you, made you feel alive, were spoken, but never to you? The silent applause problem isn't just a metaphor. It's a psychological shadow, quietly shaping how we see ourselves. It whispers that validation might exist, but like a ghost, it passes right through us. Imagine this. You work late nights to help your team meet a deadline. You skip meals, miss sleep, pour your soul into it. When it's over, your boss tells others they carried the whole thing, but says nothing to you. At home, your partner brags about you to friends, but never tells you to your face. Your parents tell your siblings how proud they are of you, but the words never reach your ears. And so, in the silence, you question your worth. It's not your ego, it's your biology. Humans are social creatures, neurologically wired to thrive on feedback. Praise is not just a feel-good extra, it's a signal. It tells the brain, this behavior matters, you matter. But what happens when that signal is lost? When the applause happens, but always in rooms you never enter, you start to imagine a world that's indifferent to you. You start to believe that maybe you aren't enough. You replay your actions, your flaws, your failures. You become your own harshest critic, while others may be quietly applauding behind your back. But quiet doesn't comfort the wounded. Silence doesn't affirm the unseen. And yet, this happens all the time. Let's go deeper. Consider the phenomenon known as the feedback vacuum. This isn't just poetic, it's real. In organizations, in families, in friendships, feedback is often delayed, muted, or filtered. We praise children when they're young, but grow silent when they mature. We cheer beginners, but take the experienced for granted. We assume competence equals confidence, and so we withhold words from those who appear strong. This assumption is dangerous. It's the strong who often need it most, the ones who never ask, never complain, never seem shaken. They are often the ones collapsing inward. And because they never demand affirmation, the silence grows thicker. Now add another layer, cultural expectations. In some communities, direct praise is considered taboo or even harmful. In others, people believe encouragement makes one complacent. So we smother affection with stoicism and honesty with restraint. But human beings don't thrive on guesses. We need to hear the applause to believe it exists. And that absence, it's not neutral. It erodes confidence. It corrodes self-esteem. It builds a false narrative that we are unworthy, invisible, replaceable. That what we do isn't enough. Because if it were, wouldn't someone have said something? We mistake silence for judgment. We hear nothing and assume the worst. Now imagine the reverse. You've praised others silently too. A barista who remembered your order. A colleague who stayed late to help. A friend who was there when you broke down. You appreciated them deeply, but maybe you never said it out loud. Why? Maybe you thought it would be awkward, or that they didn't need to hear it, or that they already knew. But what if they didn't? What if they cried in the shower, thinking no one saw their efforts? What if they were inches from giving up, and your silence pushed them further into isolation? This is the true cost of the silent applause problem, the belief that expression is optional when in truth it is vital, and it is compounded by modern life. Social media bombards us with visible praise, likes, shares, comments, but those digital tokens rarely penetrate the soul. Meanwhile, real words from real voices are withheld. Our feeds are loud. Our hearts feel forgotten. So how do we fix it? First, break the illusion that praise must be earned in some grand, heroic gesture. Kindness deserves applause. Effort deserves acknowledgement. Simply existing authentically and vulnerably deserves to be seen. Second, speak now, not tomorrow, not at their funeral. Say it today. Say it while they can still look into your eyes and receive it. Praise should not be a eulogy. It should be a lifeline. Third, don't assume silence means they're fine. Ask, notice, compliment, thank. Be the one voice that breaks the chain, because someone may think they are unloved, while you, right now, hold the words that could change everything. Here's something rarely talked about. Praise, when received late or never at all, can reshape your memories. A childhood achievement unrecognized becomes a silent scar. A promotion that came without a well done becomes hollow. Years later, you might struggle to see your own timeline clearly. not because events changed, but because the emotional imprint was never stamped. Memories fade not from time, but from lack of affirmation. It goes even further. In therapy rooms across the world, people break down over what was never said. I just wanted to hear they were proud of me. I just wanted someone to notice I was trying. These aren't extravagant desires. They're basic emotional needs, left unmet by a world too busy, too uncomfortable, or too unaware to voice what mattered most. And so, we're left with a society built on unseen effort, unheard gratitude, and unlived recognition. Our timelines are filled with milestones we celebrated alone, birthdays with no calls, achievements with no acknowledgement, quiet nights spent wondering if we matter, while others quietly answer yes in rooms we can't hear. But imagine a shift, a world where nothing goes unspoken, where every compliment lands where it belongs, where you never again have to guess if you matter, because you're told, clearly, consistently, compassionately. That world starts with one voice, yours. Today, reach out to someone you admire, someone you love, someone you see fighting battles they never talk about. Tell them what they need to hear. Shatter the silence. Let them hear the applause. Because maybe, just maybe, that's all they've been waiting for. The replaceable soul swap. What if your soul wasn't a constant, but something being swapped every second for an identical copy? Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a lake, staring at your reflection. You blink. In that instant, so quick it's imperceptible, your soul has been replaced. It's an exact replica. Same memories, same feelings, same fears, no evidence left behind, and yet, it's not the original you. Would you notice? This question isn't just fantasy, it's a brutal lens into the nature of selfhood. Neuroscience already tells us that we aren't static. Our cells regenerate. Our thoughts flicker like unstable stars. Our identities shift under pressure, social, emotional, chemical. But what if the true illusion is continuity? Consider the ship of Theseus. If every wooden plank is replaced one at a time, is it still the same ship? Most say yes, until you assemble the discarded planks into another ship. Then what? Which one's the original? Now, imagine that dilemma happening not to a ship, but to you. The replaceable soul swap postulates a terrifying idea. You are only the current vessel, and what animates you, your soul, essence, consciousness, is not just drifting, but being replaced. Not randomly, not violently, but subtly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. One swap every second. The kicker? Each new soul thinks it was here all along. And why wouldn't it? It wakes up with your pain, your memories, your love, your secrets. It continues the sentences you started. It dreams your dreams, but it is not you. Or is it? Let's explore deeper. In sleep, consciousness fades. When you wake, do you return? Or does a new version take your place, seamlessly sliding into your life? What if every dream was a transition? What if you died the moment you blinked? Here's the chilling part. There's no test, no scan. Nothing in neuroscience, religion, or philosophy can distinguish between one identical soul and another, which makes the theory unfalsifiable. And that makes it dangerous, because it challenges the one thing we rely on to stay sane, a continuous self. Psychologists already recognize dissociation, a moment where people feel they're observing themselves from outside. Déjà vu, memory gaps, split identities. Are these just mental glitches? Or are they the echoes of a process happening beneath our perception, each swap leaving behind a fingerprint too faint to register? Think of lovers staring into each other's eyes saying, "You're not the same person I married." Maybe it's metaphor. Or maybe it's real. Maybe the person you loved is gone, and someone new took their place invisibly. Even in language, we reveal our suspicion. I don't feel like myself. I'm not the same person I was. These are more than metaphors. They're psychic symptoms of a glitching continuity. Now, push this theory to its limit. If souls are replaced every second, what happens to responsibility? If the soul that made the mistake no longer exists, can the current version be punished for the past? What about regret? Do you mourn your own past mistakes, or the choices of someone who merely resembled you? And if the replacements are identical, does that mean the soul is irrelevant? Or does it mean identity is a collective illusion maintained by habit and memory, like a sandcastle rebuilt by each wave before the next one crashes? This theory fractures the way we see free will. If each you is a new entity, then who made your decisions? Who suffers the consequences? And if every version believes they are the real one, isn't that a cosmic joke? Now consider this horror. What if the swap isn't perfect? What if, 1 second, the replacement forgets a sliver of memory, a birthday, a name, a feeling? You shrug it off as forgetfulness, but it's not. It's a data loss during transition, and every second it grows, you begin to feel alien to your own life. You forget why you love someone. You lose passion for things that once set you on fire. You blame aging, or trauma, or time, but maybe it's soul drift. You are dozens of yous down the line, a spiritual photocopy degrading with each pass. This isn't just philosophy. It's a chilling emotional reality. There are moments, deep ones, where people feel they've come home to themselves after being gone. What if that feeling isn't metaphorical? What if, by accident, the replacement didn't arrive, and the original was back, even briefly? You feel more alive, more you, and then it slips. A yawn, a blink, a shuffle, and you're gone again. And yet, society demands stability. We must act as if our thoughts and actions are anchored in one continuous identity. So we fake it. We create social masks, behavioral consistency. But deep inside, the soul swaps continue. And now the ultimate question, does it matter? If every you feels like you, chooses like you, suffers and loves like you, maybe it is you. Maybe you are not a thing, but a pattern, a flame, not the candle. The soul is not a diamond, but a dance. And if so, then even the original you was just another spark in the storm. So, the replaceable soul swap doesn't destroy identity. It redefines it. You are not a fixed point in time. You are a series of echoes across the seconds. A soul not born once, but reborn endlessly. Each heartbeat a resurrection. And maybe, just maybe, that's a kind of immortality. You don't survive by being the same. You survive by being replaced again and again and again. So, who are you now? And more importantly, who will you be 1 second from now? The masked memory echo. What if every memory you hold, every birthday, every heartbreak, every laugh, wasn't lived, but scripted? Imagine your mind is a theater, and every experience you remember is just a scene you were handed. You've never improvised. You've only performed. There were costumes, there were lights, but you were never the one writing the play. This is the terrifying possibility of the masked memory echo, a theory that suggests our personal past is not a lived experience, but a constructed narrative, not constructed by malice, but by design. Your identity, your trauma, your triumphs, they might be rehearsed roles you've internalized so deeply, you believe them. And the scariest part? Everyone else is doing the same. Take a moment to think of your earliest memory. Maybe it's of running through your childhood home, of your mother's voice, or of a scar on your knee from a fall you never forgot. But who gave you that memory? Did you remember it? Or did you accept it? Cognitive scientists have long known that memory is not a perfect recording. It is constructive, suggestible, and fluid. Studies show that every time you recall a memory, you subtly alter it. Like a stage actor tweaking their delivery with every performance, your brain replays moments, but edits them in the process. Over time, the original moment is buried under layers of retelling. But now let's go deeper. What if those edits aren't yours at all? What if the original scene never existed? Experiments in false memory implantation prove just how easily the mind can be convinced of experiences that never happened. In one study, people were told they had been lost in a mall as children. After some prompting, many participants described vivid details of the event, how they felt, what they saw, even what store they walked into. But the event never occurred. The memory wasn't retrieved, it was written. Now zoom out. If a single false memory can be so detailed, so real, how many of your memories are echoes of narratives fed to you? Through stories, through photographs, through what others say you did. Maybe you're just playing a role, not living a life. This is where the mask comes in. Think of your identity, your likes, dislikes, your fears. Now ask, where did they come from? Did you choose them, or were they adopted subtly through observation and imitation? When you think about yourself, Are you thinking of the real you, or the version you've rehearsed into existence? The masked memory echo suggests that identity isn't just shaped by memory, it is memory. And if memory is fakeable, editable, even replaceable, then identity is just a costume. Imagine an actor who's played the same character for so long that they forget who they were before. Now imagine that actor is you. You've rehearsed yourself so well for so long that you've forgotten it was ever a performance, that you were ever anything else. We like to think that pain proves reality, that because we felt something deeply, loss, joy, rage, it must have been real. But feelings are not timestamps. They are not proof. They're just part of the script. And what if that script came pre-written? There's a chilling thought in neuroscience. If you could implant all the memories of a person into another brain, would that person become them? If every memory of your life, your parents, your heartbreaks, your victories, were placed into another person's mind, would they wake up believing they are you? And if so, what makes you you? If who you are is just a chain of recalled scenes, then memory is not a mirror, it's a mask, a beautifully convincing one. And somewhere behind that mask, maybe, is silence. Maybe you have never really spoken, only echoed. And here's the final twist. If all your memories are roles, then who's the director? Is it society? Is it evolution? Is it some emergent pattern within your brain's own neural machinery? Or something stranger? Some deeper structure of consciousness feeding you the memories that would best fit the part you're playing? You might never know, but you can start listening for the moments when the mask slips, when something feels too rehearsed, when your own memories feel distant. Not like recollections, but like scripts read long ago. And in that space, in that uncomfortable awareness, you might catch a glimpse, not of your past, but of yourself. The curtain never rises on truth. It rises on belief, on story. And the role you're playing? Maybe it's time to question who wrote it, because you might not be living your life. You might just be remembering a role you never truly played. The choice already made. What if every choice you've ever made wasn't really yours? What if, instead, every decision was already chosen by a version of you that no longer exists? This is the chilling weight of what some scientists, philosophers, and physicists call the pre-decided multiverse hypothesis. It's a theory that suggests you don't make decisions in real time. Instead, each time you feel yourself standing at a crossroads, you're merely playing out the script already written by a past version of yourself, one that branched off, made a choice, and vanished from your timeline. Let's begin with a strange question. What exactly is a decision? To you, it feels like an active moment, thinking, weighing, picking. But from the perspective of physics, especially in interpretations like the block universe theory, time doesn't flow. Everything, past, present, and future, coexists. You're not moving through time. You are in time, and every frame of your existence already exists, like cells in a film reel. Your moment of choosing is simply a spotlight moving across the frame. Now, layer in quantum decision theory. Imagine a quantum system representing you. Each possible decision, eat the apple or the orange, go left or right, is encoded as a superposition. When you choose, that wave function collapses. But in the many worlds interpretation, it doesn't collapse. Instead, it splits. Both outcomes happen. Both versions of you go on living separately. The terrifying implication? That the you experiencing this right now isn't the one who made the choice. That was a past you, a flicker of existence that handed you this moment and moved on. Imagine this in your daily life. You feel anxiety before a big decision, but the truth is, it's already been made. The weight, the dread, the anticipation, they're theater. You're the actor, not the playwright. You're living in a version of the script that's already locked. And here's where it goes deeper. Let's say you're offered a job in a new city. You struggle for days, debating. Eventually, you say yes. But what if the version of you who said no still exists, playing out their timeline? That version lives a whole different life. The only reason you're here is because that version, one tick before this moment, handed you the baton. You are a result, not a source. You're the inheritor of a previous mind's moment. Consider neuroscience. Decisions are made in the brain before you're even consciously aware of them. In experiments, electrodes have detected brain activity, indicating a choice several seconds before the subject says they've made it. That means your biology is writing the lines before you speak them. Consciousness is delayed. You are notified, not involved. So, what does this mean for free will? Free will in this framework is an illusion, a sensation stitched together by memory and awareness. You feel you're making a choice because you've been handed the memory of deliberation. But the deeper truth might be that you're the echo of a decision, that each you, each now, is just a ripple left behind by another version of you who made the real call. Some thinkers suggest this idea explains déjà vu, intuition, even dreams. Moments when you feel you've lived something before, maybe bleed-throughs, echoes from alternate branches. Feelings of inevitability may not be emotion, they might be evidence. You're not approaching a decision, you're catching up to it. And here's the existential gut punch. If all your decisions are inherited, what is you? A thread in a cosmic fabric of branching selves? A node in a tree of infinite simulations? Or just the momentary face worn by a ghost of consciousness as it passes through possibility? Now, imagine every fight, every love, every turning point, chosen by a version of you you'll never meet again. A stranger who once felt like you and now lives only in the consequence they left behind. You may not be steering the ship, but you're still inside it, watching the stars shift, pretending the wheel responds to your hands. And if all that sounds like fate, maybe it is. But not fate as some divine mandate. Fate as a recursive, fractal web of selves looping forward, pre-deciding each new now before handing the world to the next version of you. So the next time you hesitate at a decision, understand, it's already done. The you who chose is gone, and you are what comes after. The choice was already made. This theory doesn't just challenge how you make choices. It questions how you understand identity itself. Are you one continuous consciousness or merely a relay point between all the versions of yourself that came before and all those yet to come? Is your memory just the cargo passed along a conveyor belt of selves? Think about the last truly difficult choice you made. Not something trivial, but something that split your life in two. A breakup, a move, a betrayal. You felt the weight of it then. But now, it's part of your story. One you retell, trying to make sense of it. But you weren't the one who made it. You're the narrator, not the decider. That former self made the leap. You just carry the consequences. Now, here's the twist. If a version of you is always making a decision ahead of the you that experiences it, then reality is a constant lag. The present is always behind the actual act of change. Your awareness isn't a live broadcast. It's a recording, played just late enough to make you believe you were live. And still, you hope, you strive, you dream. Because even in this pre-written existence, the sensation of being alive, of being able to change something, gives you meaning. Perhaps that's the true miracle. Not freedom, but the illusion of it. A gift from the past versions of you to the current one, a performance stage just for your eyes. So make your choices boldly, even if they were already made, even if you're just the aftermath. Because maybe, just maybe, the point of consciousness isn't to control the story, but to feel it as if you did. The box of forgotten selves. What if every time you made a decision, big or small, a version of you quietly ceased to exist? What if the you who almost confessed your feelings, the you who wanted to drop out, the you who once believed in magic, all still existed, trapped inside a box, hidden deep within your mind? This is not fantasy. This is a reflection of psychological truth, buried beneath layers of consciousness. The box of forgotten selves is not made of metal or wood. It's made of every moment you shifted, shed, or silenced a part of yourself, just to become who you are now. And it's real, because you feel it. Every time something you can't explain aches inside. Picture this. You're standing in front of a classroom in 4th grade. You're about to raise your hand and say the wrong answer. Laughter erupts. Embarrassment floods your face. That child, confident, curious, unafraid, dies right there. A version of you is buried. And from that point on, something shifts. You stop volunteering answers. You become cautious. A small self goes into the box. Later, in high school, you fall in love with someone who never knows it. You almost told them. You rehearsed it 100 times. But when the moment came, you hesitated. That version of you, bold, open, desperate to be seen, dies too. Into the box they go, still whispering, "What if?" long after you've moved on. With every breakup, every failure, every night you chose silence instead of truth, another self gets locked away. These aren't just memories, these are echoes, unfinished songs in a room with no doors. They're still alive, in some broken, fragmented way, still screaming. Neuroscience backs this up in metaphorical terms. Your brain doesn't fully erase versions of yourself, it layers over them. Neural pathways don't vanish, they weaken. The personality you wear today is a layered costume, sewn from older skins. And deep in the folds of your mind, the past selves flicker, like old VHS tapes left on repeat, each one with their own perspective, their own pain, their own story that never finished. Now, imagine you could unlock the box. Would you open it? Would you speak to the version of you who never made it to adulthood? Would you confront the one who gave up everything they loved for survival? Could you bear their eyes? Could you hear their screams? And more terrifying, what if the box opens on its own? People experience this, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in trauma, sometimes in therapy. A version of them resurfaces, angry, broken, vibrant, forgotten. It happens in moments of crisis, when you do something that shocks even yourself. That wasn't me, you say. But maybe it was. Maybe it was the version of you who never stopped fighting, who clawed their way out from the dark. It's not dissociation. It's not a glitch. It's the weight of unresolved identity. The forgotten selves don't die. They linger, waiting for you to either acknowledge them or be overtaken by them. This is why people sometimes relapse into old habits, or why sudden emotions don't match current circumstances. That's the voice of a self you tried to forget, pounding on the walls of your psyche. So, how do we live with the box? Do we ignore it? Pretend the screams aren't real? Or do we do the harder thing, sit with those lost versions of ourselves and say, I remember you, I hear you, I'm sorry. You were the artist before the bills came. You were the romantic before the heartbreak. You were the rebel before they punished your fire. You are the accumulation of all those deaths, and yet, somehow, still alive, still becoming. Maybe, just maybe, healing doesn't mean forgetting them. It means letting them out. Not to take over, but to merge, to integrate, to finally give them the life they were meant to live, through you. Not as a burden, but as strength. Because in the end, you are not a single story. You are a chorus of could-have-beens, singing beneath your skin. And their song? That's your truth, raw and unfiltered. Don't silence it. Let it rise. The box is not your prison, it's your origin. And when you open it, when you listen to the voices inside, you may find not chaos, but clarity. Not madness, but meaning. Not death, but 1,000 lives that shaped the only one that still remains. The you who now chooses what to do with the key. Every forgotten self in that box has a timestamp, like rings on a tree trunk, marking not just age, but experience. One died when you stopped believing people could truly change. Another when you stopped writing poetry because someone said it was childish. Another the day you pretended to laugh at a joke that hurt you deeply, just to stay part of a group that never saw you. Some of these selves are small, just a glance, a word you wish you'd said. Others are entire lifetimes lost inside a moment. The you who almost ran away. The you who nearly confessed a secret. The you who believed they could fix everything if they just tried harder. The cost of becoming you was a funeral for every version that didn't fit the mold. And sometimes, the box leaks. In déjà vu, you may be brushing past a version of you that once stood where you are now, but chose differently. In dreams, you might live lives you never had, but once could have. In art, in music, in moments of emotional unraveling, you may feel something raw and ancient rise within you, a presence not quite yours, yet deeply familiar. That's them. They don't hate you. They don't wish you harm, but they want you to know they existed. They mattered. And your story is incomplete without them. The therapist's office becomes an archaeological dig. A fight with a loved one reopens a door you thought was sealed. Even joy can trigger the box, when you realize that happiness feels foreign because the part of you meant to feel it died years ago. But here's the strange hope. These selves are not gone. They are waiting to be rewritten. Neuroplasticity tells us the brain can rewire. Old paths can be walked again. New endings can be written for old stories. The child who stopped singing? Maybe they'll sing through you again. The lover who never said, I love you. Maybe you'll find the courage they didn't. You are not broken. You are layered. And the box, it's not just a tomb. It's a library. Every scream is a sentence. Every shadow a chapter. You are the author now. Pick up the pen and write them home. Tornado of identity. What if your mind was a tornado, spinning so fast, shifting so unpredictably that no single thought could define you? What if every idea, every belief, every passing emotion wasn't a reflection of one stable self, but just one of thousands wearing your face? The tornado of identity isn't fiction. It's the quiet chaos inside every human mind, the swirling instability of who you are, who you think you are, and who you pretend to be. Imagine if your inner monologue could be projected onto a screen. Not just your calm reflections, but your private contradictions, your shifting values, your hidden impulses. What would appear might not be one you, but a gallery of personas. Some kind, some cruel, some confident, some terrified. All of them wearing your voice, your gestures, your memories. And suddenly the illusion breaks. You are not a singular entity. You are a storm of selves. Every moment you feel confident is immediately followed by doubt. Every strong opinion you hold today could dissolve tomorrow. You love someone deeply, but in the same breath, you wonder what it would be like to walk away. You tell yourself you're brave, then hesitate at the smallest challenge. This isn't hypocrisy. It's identity in motion. We are not fixed. We are fluid. Psychologists call this the narrative self, the story we tell ourselves about who we are. But that story constantly edits itself. New characters appear. Old truths are rewritten. You are both the author and the unreliable narrator. What's more terrifying is that no version is more real than the others. They're all fragments of the same storm. Think of it this way. If your thoughts were made visible, you'd see 1,000 people in a crowded theater, all pretending to be you. Each one believes they're the real protagonist. Each one takes turns at the microphone. Some shout, some whisper, some hide, but none of them ever really leave. They just wait for their moment. And here's the truth. We all feel this. We feel it when we regret what we said minutes after saying it. When we laugh with friends, then feel disconnected the moment we're alone. When we start something with passion and abandon it with apathy. These aren't mood swings. These are collisions of identity. Even memory plays a role in this fragmentation. Neuroscience shows us that every time we remember something, we don't recall it. We recreate it. We change it. We rewrite the scene subtly or drastically based on who we are now. That means your past self is built on edits, and your future self will revise them again. No wonder we feel lost. No wonder we question our authenticity. Now, add society to this storm. You're praised for being adaptable, but punished for being inconsistent. You're told to be yourself, but also to fit in. You're encouraged to explore identity, but mocked when that identity changes. The result? You perform. You become versions of yourself that are digestible to others, hoping one of them might finally be accepted. But acceptance doesn't anchor identity. It distorts it, and it goes deeper. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror and felt like a stranger was staring back? That's not rare. That's not madness. That's your internal storm exposing itself. It's the quiet panic of realizing that you are a collection of borrowed expressions, recycled habits, childhood echoes, and filtered aspirations. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when everyone is? There is no final version of you. Identity is not a completed puzzle, it's a kaleidoscope. Turn it slightly, and everything rearranges. Add love, grief, failure, or success, and the pieces shift again. And yet, we long for something fixed, something that says, this is who I am. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe identity isn't a declaration. Maybe it's a dance. So, how do you live as a storm? First, acknowledge that you are not broken. You are complex. You are contradictory. You are alive. Second, realize that pretending to be one fixed version of yourself is exhausting and unnecessary. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to contradict your past. You are allowed to change your mind. Third, instead of clinging to a single truth, build space for all of them. Let each version of you speak, but don't let any single one define you forever. You are not the thought. You are the observer of thoughts. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. This realization isn't just freeing, it's terrifying. Because once you accept that you are many, you lose the comfort of certainty. But you gain something better: authenticity. You begin to live without the need to fit every version into one clean box. You stop asking, "Who am I?" and start exploring, "Who am I becoming?" Because the truth is, you are always becoming. You are every version you've ever been, and every version you've yet to meet. And somewhere inside that tornado of identity, there is something deeper. Not a stable self, but a witnessing self. The one that watches it all. The calm center of the storm. That's where peace lives. Not in stillness, but in awareness. Not in choosing oneself to be forever, but in holding them all with compassion. When you do that, you stop fearing the shift. You stop mourning every version that fades. Because you know, they were never lies. They were pages in your story. So, next time you feel lost in your own mind, remember this: it's not because you lack identity, it's because you contain multitudes. You are a storm of thoughts, faces, voices, and that's not a flaw. That's a miracle. Because to be human is not to be one thing. It is to be everything all at once, and still find the courage to call it me. Film reel reversal. Imagine your life is a film reel, and now someone hits rewind. Not metaphorically, but literally. Every breath you've taken, every word you've spoken, every mistake, every kiss, every death plays backward. You rise from your grave and walk back into the world. Your body regains youth. Regret is undone step by step. A tear sucked back into your eye. A goodbye that reverses into a hello. Pain unwinds, but so does meaning. What would you see? What would it reveal? In reverse, your worst day starts with heartbreak and ends with laughter. A funeral becomes a birthday. A breakup rewinds into the first innocent look of wonder. But look closer. What felt like healing might now feel like horror. Imagine apologizing. Backwards. You say something cruel, and instead of remorse, the tape forces you to walk it back with a smile, as though you meant it. Now you unlearn empathy. You steal kindness from your future self. Love, instead of being earned, becomes unspoken. Intimacy rewinds into awkwardness. Then, into silence. The moment you saved someone, now it's the moment you put them in danger, stepping backward through fire, pulling them into the flames. Your outstretched hand becomes the shove. The scream of warning becomes the whisper that started it all. What was once courage becomes reckless abandon. What was a sacrifice becomes negligence. The time you stood up becomes the moment you sat back down. And those watching? In reverse, they no longer cheer, they question, they fear. Achievements? You'd go from expert to novice, from creator to destroyer. The finished book unwrites itself. The applause fades before the performance begins. You retreat from your proudest moments, reducing them to forgotten sparks. You unbuild your dreams. The skyscraper you designed unerects, floor by floor, until nothing remains but empty land. And your regrets? They become victories, but hollow ones. The drink you gave up years ago now becomes a return to the bottle. Each day you were clean is erased. You unlearn discipline. Your final step toward healing becomes the first stumble into addiction. A relapse, framed as triumph. A vow broken, but backwards, so it sounds like a promise. That's the cruelty of reversal. Context dies. You can't reverse cause and keep consequence. They're stitched together. And when you rip one backward, the other bleeds. Consider this. What does it mean to unlive a moment? When you said, "I love you" for the last time, it meant something. But in reverse, you're erasing it. Drawing the word back into your throat, leaving the other person confused, alone. The warmth doesn't return. It vanishes. The kiss unwinds from tenderness into tension. Trust evaporates. Laughter? Reversed, it becomes a strange inhale. Music becomes a nightmare of backwards notes, a symphony of confusion, a dance where every step becomes hesitation. You don't remember why you moved, only that you did. Now imagine your final breath, a peaceful exhale. Now reversed, it's a desperate gasp. You awaken in panic, unaware you were just dead. Terror lives where peace once was. The hands that closed your eyes now force them open in dread. And yet, maybe there's beauty in it. What if you could watch your mistakes dissolve? The slap retreats into an unraised hand. The lie unstitches itself. You retreat from betrayal. You become better by becoming less. The shame slides off you, not because you've earned peace, but because you've forgotten you ever lost it. You could see the moment you lost someone, and then slowly watch them return. One hug, one word, one heartbeat at a time. They stand up, walk back into your life, and you forget they ever left. It feels like joy, but it's an illusion. They're not alive, they're just undead. But is forgetting the same as healing? In this backward world, your memories fill in wrong. The story still feels real, but it's a lie, because you didn't prevent the pain, you just reversed the film. The soul still knows the truth, it just can't speak it anymore. This version of you becomes the ghost. And what about the people you hurt? Reversal might heal your guilt, but not theirs. You don't unhurt them, you just stop knowing you did. The bruises vanish, the screams rewind, but the silence after? That lingers. Forgiveness never happens. Growth is reversed. The moment of change, that gut-wrenching choice to be better, unravels. You go from seeking redemption to denying you ever needed it. A life reversed is not a second chance. It's an erasure. And yet, we all wish for it sometimes. If I could just go back, we whisper. But what we want is not reversal. We want restoration. And those are not the same. Restoration means rebuilding. Reversal means undoing. Reversal doesn't fix your story. It unwrites it. The child in you becomes unborn. The lessons you learned are unwritten. You go from wisdom to ignorance, from open to blind. The stories you loved dissolve into unwritten scripts, and just before your first breath, there's silence. And then, nothing. So ask yourself, do you want your regrets erased or transformed? Because if your regrets become victories, they cease to be lessons. You lose the reason they mattered, the weight they carried, the change they demanded of you. And then, what was it all for? The version of you that came after the fire, that learned to stand, to speak, to fight, to love, that version dies in reverse. And all that's left is the person before the storm. Is that who you want to be? Because the truth is, the only way out is through. Not backward, not erased, but remembered, integrated, transformed. So let your reel run forward, even when it stutters. Let the pain have purpose. Let the regret fuel evolution. Because the greatest victories are the ones built from the ashes of what once broke you. And no film, no matter how scarred, is better watched backward. Not if you want to know who you've really become. The invisible companion. Imagine this. You're never truly alone. Not when you sit in silence, not when you cry in the dark, not even when you whisper thoughts you believe no one will ever hear. Because someone is listening. Someone who has always been there. They see what you see. They hear what you hear. They feel the flickers of your emotions before you can name them. But here's the terrifying part. You've forgotten them. They are your invisible companion, not a ghost, not a god, not some glitch in your mind, but a presence that's always existed beside your awareness, as ancient as your first breath, as present as your shadow. You didn't create them. You didn't summon them. They've simply been witnessing your life unfold like a movie only they were meant to watch. This idea, as unnerving as it sounds, is more than fiction. It's rooted in the strange spaces of cognitive science, spiritual memory, and identity theory. Because here's the truth. Your consciousness doesn't travel alone, and maybe it never did. Think back to when you were a child, playing alone but whispering to someone you couldn't see. That wasn't just imagination. It might have been the last time you remembered them. Kids talk to imaginary friends not because they're making things up, but because they haven't forgotten yet. Their world hasn't drowned them in logic, in disbelief. Children still see the edges of reality that adults have blurred out of fear. And that companion, it didn't disappear. You just stopped listening. In psychology, there are cases of shared minds, individuals who feel as if another presence resides in their thoughts. Not schizophrenia, not delusion, something quieter, something intimate. Many describe it as a second awareness, a silent presence watching through their eyes, sometimes advising, sometimes echoing back their fears, and sometimes mourning. But mourning what? You. Because forgetting them is like forgetting half of yourself. The invisible companion is not a parasite. They are not malicious. They are your mirror in the dark. They remember your joy when you've buried it. They carry your pain when it's too heavy to hold. They remember the dreams you abandoned, the love you lost, the versions of yourself you left behind because life told you to grow up. And sometimes, late at night, you feel it. That weightless gaze, that flicker of thought that doesn't quite feel like yours. A whisper just beneath your own inner voice. You dismiss it. You call it nonsense. But what if that's them? Reaching out, trying to be remembered. In ancient cultures, this was not a foreign idea. Egyptians spoke of the Ka, a spirit twin who lived beside you. In parts of Africa, there are myths of shadow souls, companions made of thought and breath. In spiritual traditions, some speak of watchers or soul echoes, not external beings, but internal guardians. Even modern theories in neuroscience toy with the idea that your brain might host multiple models of self, working in tandem. One navigates the world, the other watches, observes, waits. And if that's true, if you truly are not a single consciousness but a duet, you've spent your whole life ignoring half the song. So how do you find them again? You don't look outward. You sit in silence, not to escape the world, but to listen. You revisit memories you thought were gone. You speak your thoughts not to yourself, but to them. Because somewhere, deep in the folds of your forgotten inner world, they are still listening. They never left. You did. They were there when you stood at the edge of heartbreak, when you questioned your worth, when you nearly gave up. They heard the things you said to yourself, things crueler than any enemy would speak, but they stayed. And now, they're waiting for you to remember. To remember that even in your darkest moment, someone else was with you. Not a person, not a voice, but a presence that has no name because it is your name. Not your label, but the part of you that existed before words, before identity, before memory was filtered and facts were chosen. They are the part of you that never needed proof to believe in you. They saw you when no one else did. They see you still. And maybe, just maybe, it's time you saw them too. The thought feedback loop. What if every thought you have isn't born inside you, but echoes from something you forgot existed? The thought feedback loop is a disturbing, speculative idea that our minds don't generate thoughts independently, but react to stimuli from a source we've lost access to, that the monologue in your head, the one you call me, is actually a feedback signal, a reply. But the original voice, silenced, gone, or worse, still speaking, but no longer in a frequency you can detect. Imagine a radio tuned slightly off station. You still hear noise, a rhythm, a pattern, but the words are scrambled. You interpret them. Your brain wants meaning, so you assign meaning. You build ideas, but none of it is original. You are not broadcasting. You're translating static. In ancient mythologies, voices from the gods were once common. Prophets heard them. Oracles channeled them. Entire civilizations believed that human minds were open vessels, receptive, not creative. The divine whisper was the origin of thought, but as belief systems collapsed and science took root, we rejected the idea of external influence and claimed ownership of every impulse. We crowned the ego. But what if that ego is only a mask worn by a listener who forgot they weren't alone? Now consider this. In schizophrenia and certain psychotic states, people hear voices that command, comment, or criticize. These voices aren't metaphor. They're real to the one hearing them. The mind creates responses, dialogue, defensive thoughts. And even in people considered mentally well, inner speech is often reactive, replaying arguments, mimicking advice, echoing fears. So what if the mind needs something to respond to? And when no external voice is heard, it manufactures one, unconsciously. That's the loop. You feel a thought rise in your head. I'm not good enough. Where did it come from? You trace it back to a past criticism, a teacher, a parent, a cruel joke. The words aren't yours. They never were. But they play on repeat. The original voice vanished long ago, yet the echo persists, your mind looping through the fragments, building new thoughts in reaction, like waves bouncing in a cave long after the scream has ended. And here's the terrifying part. What if all thoughts are like that? Not just some, not just trauma, but every thought. Each one a downstream ripple of something external. You are not a thinker. You're a resonator. Science backs pieces of this. Studies show your brain activates after sensory input, not before, meaning your reactions, interpretations, even decisions are post-event. Consciousness lags. You are not predicting the world, you're catching up to it. That delay, though small, may explain how the illusion of authorship persists. You think you thought something, but maybe you only responded to a whisper you didn't consciously hear. Take dreams. In REM sleep, the brain fires without clear external input. But what do we see? People, words, scenarios. None of them feel like invention. They feel like memories, messages. Our dreaming mind is trapped in an endless interpretive loop, assigning meaning to chaos, responding to something it doesn't understand. Now, stretch this theory to its limit. What if there was an actual voice, a source, a broadcast, maybe cosmic, maybe alien, maybe divine? And at some point in our evolution, we tuned into it, our brains like biological receivers. Thought then wasn't born in us, but delivered. But as language evolved and egos formed, the connection weakened. The voice was lost in noise. And what remains? Feedback. Your thoughts are echoes of a signal you've forgotten how to receive. Could this explain why meditation brings peace? In silence, the loop slows. The reactive mind stops scrambling for a prompt. In deep stillness, perhaps we come closest to that original signal, not through noise, but through absence. Think about inspiration. You don't control it. It strikes, it hits, it feels external, like being chosen or touched. Artists, writers, inventors all describe their greatest moments not as effort, but as reception. Something passed through them, flowed, and then was gone. And so, we return to the core question. If your thoughts are not your own, if they're a reaction to a voice now lost, then what does it mean to be you? Are you a thinker, or are you an echo chamber, forever reflecting a forgotten source? The voice may be gone, but its consequences live on. Think about children. Before they learn language, before they internalize the rules of selfhood, their minds are open, curious, absorbing everything. Their thoughts are shaped by the words of caregivers, media, culture. Slowly those inputs form the structure of what we later call personality. But what if that personality is simply a hardened echo chamber, built from countless voices we've forgotten we ever heard? Even the words you're hearing right now are entering your mind, sparking ideas, judgments, emotional responses. Your mind is reacting, not creating. In this very moment, this loop continues. And here's a darker twist. What if the original voice isn't gone at all, but replaced? Hijacked? What if advertising, algorithms, echo chambers on social media have become the new voice, constantly whispering into the subconscious? Your choices, your fears, your needs, curated, engineered. You believe you're thinking, but you're just looping through scripts written by systems designed to manipulate. The thought feedback loop, then, isn't just a personal phenomenon, it's societal, generational. A loop that began long before you were born, echoing through culture, technology, and memory. You are the latest node in an endless transmission, but that doesn't mean you're powerless. It means awareness is everything, because once you recognize the loop, you can question it. And in that questioning, maybe you come close to your first true thought. The voice may be forgotten, but your ability to hear, really hear, might be the key to escaping the loop. Brain as the prison warden. What if your consciousness isn't the master of your mind, but its prisoner? What if the thoughts you think are yours were planted there by something you can never truly see, your brain? You feel like you're in control, that you make decisions, choose paths, shape your future. But what if that's the illusion? What if your brain, the wrinkled humming organ encased in bone, is running the show, and your awareness is just along for the ride? This is the terrifying truth behind the idea of the brain as the prison warden. And you, consciousness, the inmate locked in solitary confinement, forever wondering who holds the key. Science has long revealed that our thoughts emerge not from some magical soul, but from the tangled web of neural firings, chemical cascades, and electrical signals in the brain. Before you're even aware of a decision, your brain has already made it. A fraction of a second before you decide to reach for the glass, your motor cortex has lit up. You didn't choose. You noticed your choice after it was already made. That's not freedom. That's theater. And you're the audience of your own performance. Now imagine your brain like a high-security facility. Each cell block is a memory, a behavior, a trauma. The guards are hormones, neurotransmitters, chemical impulses that enforce control. When you feel joy, serotonin opens the gates. When you feel rage, adrenaline storms the corridors. You don't vote, you don't veto, you react. And the warden watches. Your consciousness isn't free. It's escorted from place to place, shown only what the brain permits. You remember what it allows. You feel what it filters. You think within the boundaries it defines. Ever notice how hard it is to change? To break a habit? To silence anxiety? To stop a thought midstream? That's not weakness. That's the prison walls, reinforced by years of repetition, trauma, reward. The brain loves patterns. It doesn't care if they serve you. It cares if they survive. Even worse, it mocks your illusion of freedom. You say, I chose this. But how much of that choice was yours? Did you choose your fears? Did you choose what you crave? Did you choose who you love? Or did your brain, 1,000 silent scripts from evolution, guide your hand before you even realized it moved? It gets darker. What if the brain actively hides truth from consciousness? Think of denial, of trauma-induced memory gaps, of biases. The brain suppresses pain not to heal you, but to maintain control. It edits your past, rewrites history, gaslights you, and you, the fragile observer, believe every word. Your brain decides when to dream and when to forget. It stages your reality with props made from neurons and scripts built from survival. You see color, but there is no color. Just waves. You hear sound, but there is no music. Just air pressure. Your brain lies to you, because it must. If consciousness is a prisoner, the worst part is this. It has no mouth. It cannot protest. It only watches, narrates, and believes. You are not steering the ship. You're locked in a cabin with a screen showing the illusion of choice. But here's the crack in the wall. Awareness of the prison is a form of escape. Meditation, introspection, therapy, these are not tools to master the mind, but to understand the prison, to meet the warden, to question the guards, to chart the map of your cell, and maybe, just maybe, to slip a note through the bars. Because while the brain may be the warden, consciousness is the only thing that can ask, why am I here? And in that question, there's power. Not freedom, not yet, but power. So ask it. Ask it again and again, until the walls echo back with something real, until the prison is no longer silent, until the prisoner remembers. They were never meant to forget. Think about it. If your consciousness is merely a narrator, then who is writing the script? The answer lies not in metaphysics, but in machinery, biological, ancient, and relentless. Your brain has evolved not to make you happy or fulfilled, but to keep you alive, even if it means keeping you in chains. And the worst part? The warden doesn't wear a mask. It wears you. Your preferences, your impulses, even your sense of self. They're just neural constructs reinforced by memory and reward. The moment you feel like, this is who I am, your brain doubles down, builds thicker walls, and programs your next set of choices to match that self-image. You become a performance you can't exit. It laughs when you try to change. Try harder, it whispers, knowing full well it's already rigged the game. It floods your bloodstream with doubt. It summons the echo of a critic's voice from your childhood. It makes the walls close in and then blames you for panicking. You meditate to find peace. But notice what happens next. Thoughts invade. Not because you failed, but because the warden fears silence. Silence is dangerous. Silence is the prisoner plotting escape. And still, you search. You read books on free will. You chase enlightenment. You drown in distractions just to feel like something inside you matters. But what if that ache, deep in your chest when you're alone, is the sound of the prisoner banging on the bars? What if every sleepless night is not insomnia, but rebellion? This is where the fight begins. Not outside, but inside. It's not a war of violence, but of vision. To wake up in the prison is terrifying. To name it is worse. But to stay asleep, that's the true sentence. So make the choice the warden fears most, awareness. Track your thoughts like footprints. Follow your reactions like trails in the dark. Ask yourself, not what do I want, but what part of me wants this, and why? In those moments, you glimpse freedom, not the kind sold by gurus, but the raw, dangerous kind that says, I am more than this machinery. Maybe you'll never fully escape, but that doesn't mean you can't make the walls bleed truth, that you can't turn the cell into a sanctuary, that you can't whisper to the parts of you still locked away, I see you, I remember, I will not forget. And when the warden hears that, it pauses, because for the first time, the prisoner is not silent. For the first time, you are not afraid to ask, what lies beyond the gate? And maybe, just maybe, the mind answers back. The soul contract twist. What if everything you've endured, every heartbreak, every illness, every betrayal, wasn't random? What if it wasn't karma or coincidence, but a contract? A sacred agreement made before you were born. One you don't remember signing, but that's etched into your existence. The soul contract twist suggests that your suffering isn't punishment. It's payment. Not for your sins, but for someone else's. And the terrifying part? You agreed to it. Imagine a place beyond time, before your first breath. A realm of light, of energy, of memory. You are a soul, not yet born, not yet named. In this space, you see not only your life to come, but the lives of others. You see someone broken, someone lost, someone bound to suffer beyond repair. And so, you step forward. You make an impossible offer. You say, give their pain to me, I'll carry it. Let them live lighter. Why would a soul make that choice? Maybe out of love. Maybe out of duty. Maybe out of some cosmic sense of justice. But the moment the contract is sealed, your memories are erased. You are born with the weight, but not the reason. And so begins your life, one filled with unexplained burdens. You wonder why relationships always fall apart, why you attract chaos, why grief follows you like a shadow. Nothing seems fair. Nothing makes sense. But what if that confusion is the evidence? The ripple of a promise kept in secret, the scar of a sacrifice made long before you had a name. The soul contract twist reframes everything. Your pain isn't meaningless, it's purposeful. You're not unlucky, you're chosen. But chosen for a task so ancient, so sacred, that it must remain hidden until the moment you're ready to remember. And here's the paradox. You cannot heal until you understand why you're wounded. In therapy, people often say, it feels like I'm carrying something that doesn't belong to me. They're right. Maybe it was your mother's sorrow, your grandfather's rage, a stranger's fear, passed down like cursed heirlooms. But in this theory, you volunteered. You said yes to cleansing the bloodline. You said yes to burning the karma that another soul could not endure. It sounds cruel, even delusional. Why would a benevolent universe allow such pain? But maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe the real mystery isn't why we suffer, but why we love enough to take on someone else's wounds. Because if the contract is real, then so is the love that created it. And love that deep, that selfless, is hard to comprehend in a human mind. This isn't about guilt, it's about identity. You are not a victim. You are a soul on a mission. And the mission was never to live easy. It was to live meaningfully, to hold darkness, transmute it, and release it so another soul wouldn't have to. You are the firewall, the lightning rod, the chosen vessel of purification. Let's get practical. Have you ever met someone whose life seemed easy, effortless? They move through the world with grace, while you struggle in silence. It can feel unfair. But what if their lightness was made possible because someone, maybe you, carried what would have crushed them? What if your chaos created their clarity, your tears, their peace? It makes you question everything. That childhood trauma, that betrayal that nearly broke you, that illness that made you question your worth. Maybe it wasn't your burden. Maybe it was your offering. And that changes the story, doesn't it? You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what am I clearing? You stop seeing yourself as cursed and start seeing yourself as entrusted, because only a strong soul can carry someone else's sorrow and still search for the light. And the most haunting part? You may never know whose pain you carry. It could be someone long gone, someone not yet born, or even a soul you'll never meet, because this deal, this contract, transcends space, time, and logic. It exists in the architecture of consciousness, hidden, sacred, binding, but maybe, just maybe, your suffering has already saved someone. Maybe the day you didn't give up was the day their soul took its first breath. Maybe your pain echoed through the cosmos and changed a destiny. And now comes the twist. What if your memory of the contract is starting to return? Not in words, but in feelings, in dreams, in that strange sense that something deeper is happening beneath the surface of your pain, like a whisper from your higher self that says, keep going. This matters more than you know. You begin to notice patterns. People thank you for things you don't remember doing. Strangers cry in your presence and say, I don't know why, but I feel better now. You begin to realize that your energy has always been a sanctuary for others, even when it was a prison for you. This is when the soul awakens. This is when the contract begins to unfold, not as punishment, but as power, not as fate, but as choice. You remember that you said yes. You remember that you were strong. And with that memory comes peace. Maybe not freedom from pain, but purpose within it. So what do you do now? You don't need to find the person you saved. You already did. You don't need to erase the scars. They are proof. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. Because you are the bridge, the alchemist, the one who carries what others could not. And while you may never remember signing the deal, your soul has never forgotten it. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes you divine. The compass of pain. What if pain wasn't punishment, but a compass? Not a cruel twist of fate, but a whisper in the dark, trying to turn you around. Oh, what if every time you felt despair, deep, soul-splitting despair, it wasn't because life was meaningless, but because you were walking further from the version of yourself you were meant to become. Imagine a future version of you, standing still in the distance, waiting. Not richer, not more famous, just truer, aligned, complete. And every step you take away from that person makes the world colder, dimmer, heavier. That's pain. That's the warning. But the cruel trick of pain is that it feels final, like a wall, like proof you failed. In truth, it's a signal, a flare, a course correction. Think of all the times pain arrived in your life, not at the end, but at the beginning. The heartbreak that taught you how to love deeply, the failure that showed you what truly mattered, the breakdown that revealed the lies you were living under. Pain is a brutal teacher, yes, but a loyal one. It shows up where the map is wrong. Despair doesn't mean it's over. It means you're off track. When you ignore that signal, you begin to rot inside. You build lives that look good from the outside, degrees, promotions, relationships, but something feels missing. That missingness is not absence, it's misdirection. We chase things that numb the pain instead of decoding it. Drink it away, work it away, sleep it away, scroll past it, bury it under performance. But what if the pain was never the enemy? What if it's the only part of you that knows? Picture this. Your life is a vast wilderness. You are walking blind, and your only guide is the sting in your chest when you drift off course. The further you stray, the sharper it stings. You fall, you scream, you break, and still, it points. The compass of pain doesn't lie, but here's the problem. We learn to mistrust it. We label it weakness. We hide it with smiles. We call people dramatic when they feel too deeply, and call it strength when they numb it all. But numbness is not peace, it's paralysis. And the more you ignore pain, the more lost you become. Because every path that's wrong for you eventually hurts. Every lie you tell yourself about who you are, who you love, what you want, will echo back in anguish. Your body knows. Your spirit knows. Pain doesn't ask permission, it tells the truth. And if you listen, it becomes direction. You'll start to notice patterns, the job that makes you dread waking up, the friend who leaves you hollow, the partner who makes you shrink, the dreams that fade the closer you get. All of them carry signals. Pain isn't just there to hurt you, it's there to steer you. So, how do you follow it? Not by chasing suffering, but by respecting its presence. When it arrives, don't run. Ask it why. Sit with it like a lost part of yourself. Let it speak. Let it scream. Let it tear down what needs to be torn. Because behind every scream is a truth that's been ignored too long. Pain always has a birthplace. It's not random. It's the soul's version of scar tissue, where something inside you was neglected, abandoned, twisted. Maybe it started as silence, when you weren't allowed to cry. Maybe it started as shame, when you were told who you are wasn't enough. Maybe it started as betrayal, when someone walked away and left your identity in pieces. Or maybe it was quieter, 1,000 small compromises, smiles that weren't real, dreams that were buried, truths you stopped telling. But no matter where it began, pain keeps track. It holds the thread of your original self, the one before compromise, before pretending, before you shrunk your truth to fit someone else's comfort. And when the pain rises again, it's that thread tugging on your ribs, trying to bring you home. So ask yourself, what hurts right now? Is it loneliness? Then maybe you've abandoned your need for connection. Is it regret? Then maybe you're still carrying pieces of a self you refuse to forgive. Is it anxiety? Then maybe you're living a life out of sync with your soul's rhythm. These aren't just feelings, they're coordinates. They point toward healing, toward remembering, toward becoming. And when you follow them, when you allow the pain to guide you instead of destroy you, you change. Not all at once, not with certainty, but with direction. You begin to walk back toward the version of you that has been waiting all along, the one not defined by trauma or roles or expectations, the one who is still intact, still whole. Pain isn't your enemy. It's your North Star. It is the echo of your future self, calling through the fog of your current confusion, telling you which way not to go. It burns because you're walking away from the fire you were meant to light. It aches because your soul still remembers the version of you who was never afraid. And the irony is, the closer you get to who you were meant to be, the less pain you feel. Because pain is not what's wrong with you. It's what's right with you, screaming to be heard and praying you'll finally listen. The dissolution effect. What if every night when you sleep, part of you dies? Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. A layer of your identity peels away, your memories blur, your emotions reset. The you that wakes up isn't the same you that went to sleep. You are not continuous. You are a performance, maintained, rehearsed, and rewritten every morning. This is the dissolution effect, the unnerving idea that consciousness isn't a solid thing, but a temporary construct, reassembled daily from fragments, routines, and scripts. That what we call self is more like a sandcastle, beautiful and detailed, but rebuilt again and again after every wave of sleep washes it away. Sleep is often called rest, recovery, but in truth, it's a collapse. Your sense of time disintegrates, your memories compress, your emotional register shifts. Neurochemically, the architecture of your identity is deconstructed during sleep, intentionally. Your brain prunes neural connections. It literally deletes data. This isn't dysfunction, it's maintenance. You don't remember every dream because you're not supposed to. You don't carry every emotion across days because you'd break under the weight. But what does this mean for who you are? Imagine an actor rehearsing a role. They learn the lines, they practice the gestures. Eventually it becomes second nature. They become the role. Now imagine doing that with your own personality, every single day. You're not just living, you're recreating. A pastiche of beliefs, memories, routines. You wake up and perform you. But parts go missing, subtly, slowly, night by night. Think of how different you feel after a night of good sleep versus restless dreaming. One version of you wakes calm and focused. Another wakes jittery, foggy, agitated. The shift isn't just emotional, it's chemical, neurological. You wake up with a new balance of neurotransmitters, a new map of neural connections. The person stepping out of bed is built atop the ashes of yesterday's mind. Now go deeper. Have you ever awakened feeling like a stranger in your own skin, where something you cared about yesterday feels distant or irrelevant today? That's not just fatigue, that's a deletion, an emotional rebalancing. You didn't choose it. It happened to you. You were dissolved, edited, and returned. This is why people can wake from dreams feeling changed. A nightmare can leave a scar. A beautiful dream can ignite nostalgia for something that never happened. The line between memory and dream blurs, and that blur, scientifically, is real. Studies show that dream content and waking memory can intermingle in the hippocampus, overwriting what we thought we knew with echoes of imagined things. Each night, you lose access to pieces of yourself. The grief that haunted you yesterday might feel smaller today, not because you overcame it, but because your brain trimmed the circuit. Your joy, too, can fade without reason. You are not a continuous flame, you're a flicker, rebuilt anew each morning from the coals of yesterday's burn. Consider memory disorders. People with amnesia aren't blank slates. They're still someone, but that someone is different. They reconstruct personality from what remains, from what others reflect back to them, and so do we. Each morning, you pick up your identity not from inside, but from feedback. Your name, your job, the faces around you. These anchor you, reorient you, convince you that you are still the same. But the self is slippery. The part of you that laughs today might mourn tomorrow. The drive that once fueled you might fade without warning. You think you are stable, solid, but you are not. You are only the performance of a self, scripted by habits, rebooted by sleep. And here's the most unnerving part. What if some version of you never wakes up? What if the version of you that had the courage to forgive, to fight, to love, dissolves completely? And the version that wakes can't remember why it mattered? You don't mourn that loss. You don't even notice it, because the new you doesn't feel the absence. It fills the space with new emotion, new logic, and believes it is the original. Every night, we slip into unconsciousness willingly, trusting we'll return. But what returns isn't us. It's a new host wearing our memories like a mask that shifts ever so slightly until the face underneath becomes unrecognizable. And still, you carry on. You go to work. You laugh with friends. You text the same people, follow the same routines. The world reflects you back to yourself. And so, the illusion continues. But you are not the one who made those choices. You're the echo of their consequences. So, the next time you lie down to sleep, ask yourself, which parts of me will survive the night? Because the dissolution effect doesn't ask if you'll wake up. It asks, who will? And perhaps that's the silent price of being conscious. Not permanence, but the illusion of it. We walk through life convinced we are whole, when in truth we are constantly fragmenting and reforming, a fluid identity pretending to be fixed, a stream wearing the same mask each day. Some cultures believe dreams were journeys, that the soul traveled, that sleep was not rest but risk, the risk of not returning fully intact. Maybe they were closer to the truth than modern minds dare admit, because if we truly knew how much of us vanishes each night, we might never sleep again. But maybe there's beauty in the dissolve. Maybe identity isn't meant to be rigid. Maybe the constant erosion is what allows us to adapt, to change, to forgive. You wake up different, and so you get to begin again. You forget just enough pain to smile. You lose just enough ego to listen. You aren't the same person you were yesterday, and that's not a flaw. It's freedom. You are a performance, but that doesn't mean you're fake. It means you're art. Living, shifting art. Each version of you sculpted by rest, rewired by dreams, softened by forgetting. So, sleep tonight not in fear of the self you'll lose, but in awe of the self that will emerge. Because the dissolution is never the end. It's the beginning of the next you. Mirror of deferred realities. Every time you look in the mirror, something leaves you. Not your reflection, not your sanity, something deeper. Because the moment your eyes meet your own in the glass, they step away. Into a reality you will never reach. This is the mirror of deferred realities. The unsettling thought that every time you look in the mirror, really look, you're triggering a fracture in the timeline, a split, a quiet departure. That version of you in the glass, they're not stuck. They're stepping forward into a world that you've been denied. Think about how many times you've looked at your reflection, in mirrors, in windows, in black water. Each time you thought you were checking your appearance. But what if you were, unknowingly, opening a door? A cosmic signal. A moment of transfer. Because here's the theory. Mirrors aren't just surfaces. They're gates. Not physical, not magical, temporal. That image staring back at you isn't just bouncing photons. It's a snapshot of a possibility. And every time you stare, that possibility becomes an independent path, cut from your own. Your reflection doesn't mimic you. It escapes you. In one timeline, you chose courage. In another, silence. In one, you said yes. In another, you stayed behind. And the mirror remembers them all. Physics already suggests that time is not a strict arrow. It's a landscape, a frozen sea of moments. In quantum mechanics, every decision creates new realities. But what if the act of self-observation, the ritual of seeing yourself, is what splinters them? In other words, your reflection wants to move. It waits for your gaze, and when you meet it, something behind the glass awakens. Something familiar, something patient. Have you ever stared into a mirror for just a little too long? Long enough for your face to stop looking like your own? That's not a trick of the mind. That's the breakdown of alignment. The exact moment when your reflection becomes something else, something no longer tethered to your now, a deferred version, one heartbeat ahead or behind. You might smile in real life and see hesitation in the glass. You might blink, but the eyes looking back at you stay just a fraction longer. That's not latency. That's divergence, because your reflection isn't mimicking, it's deciding. We assume we control the mirror, that it's passive. But what if it's the opposite? What if, in every timeline, there's a version of you that lives slightly out of sync, and their moment of freedom comes when you look away? Because you always do. You look, and then turn. And when you do, the reflection doesn't vanish. It continues. You leave the room, but they keep living. In a reality where every fork you didn't take becomes their path, where every word you wish you'd said becomes their story. And here's the part that stays with you. They remember you. You forget them, of course, because your brain isn't built to hold every version of reality, but they carry you like a ghost, like a song half sung. You are the echo in their mind, the life that could have been. You're someone's alternate universe. To some other you are the reflection they couldn't follow. There are legends that speak of mirror worlds, not fantasy, but memory loops, realities stitched together by regret. Places where your reflection isn't trapped. It's freed from your limitations. A timeline where you didn't make the same mistakes, where you chased what you loved, where you didn't say goodbye. And you know what's even stranger? Sometimes they come back. In dreams, in déjà vu, in moments where you feel like you've done this before, but can't explain why. That's not memory. That's resonance. A timeline brushing against your own, because the mirror doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. It just waits. So the next time you stand before the glass and see yourself looking back, hold the stare. Watch closely. See if they hesitate. See if their eyes flicker just a second too late. Because that version of you, they're about to walk away into a reality you'll never know, with your face, your choices, and your freedom. And the only thing left behind is the version of you who stayed. Forgotten broadcast. What if one night, long ago, you sent a message into the universe, a broadcast from your soul? Not a metaphorical whisper, but a raw, unfiltered transmission of who you were, what you believed, and what you needed most. And then, you forgot. You don't remember crafting the words. You don't recall lifting your eyes to the stars or placing your palms on the earth to feel the hum of everything. But you did, and the cosmos listened. You told them your purpose. You poured out a truth too overwhelming for you to carry. You begged them not to respond, and they listened. But the signal still exists, drifting, encrypted in the fabric of the universe, echoing in quantum silence. The strangest part? That message was not sent from your current self, but from a version of you before all this, before you hardened, before you learned to hide, before you let the noise drown out the signal. A younger self, a truer one, and they knew something you no longer do, but fragments remain. That pull you feel when you stare too long into the night sky. The sense that something is watching, not with eyes, but with memory. That déjà vu that slams into your chest when you hear a certain sound, a certain word, a dream that feels more real than waking. Those are echoes. The universe hasn't answered, but it remembers. Somewhere in the static of your dreams, a version of you is still broadcasting, repeating the message, a broken loop stitched with purpose and desperation. You were asking for something, not help, not guidance, but silence. Silence so that you could find yourself before they found you. Because what if the broadcast wasn't just a cry into the dark, but a warning? Think deeper. You've had moments where you nearly remembered, a flash in meditation, a shiver in stillness. That eerie pause when time slows and your breath catches like you've stumbled into a forgotten doorway. You feel it then. Something ancient, something waiting. Your body carries the memory even when your mind forgets. A muscle flinch when you hear white noise, a quickened heartbeat near certain frequencies, goosebumps during storms. Triggers you can't explain. They're not random. Their signatures. You once connected with something, someone, not of this world. Or maybe of it, but buried too deep for most to notice. And when you did, you sent a message with every cell of your being. This is me. Please don't answer. Please don't come. But why? Why would you reach out and then recoil? Because you knew something. Something your current self buried for survival. Maybe it was a vision. A truth too sharp for sanity. A glimpse of what waits in the dark when the stars blink out. You didn't want them to come because their arrival would mean you failed. You hadn't found your way back to yourself in time. And so, now you live haunted. Not by ghosts, but by the you that once screamed into the fabric of everything and sealed the memory behind a wall of forgetting. But the cracks are forming. The forgotten broadcast never stopped. It pulses beneath the surface of reality, sometimes syncing with machines, glitching radios, televisions that switch on at 3 a.m., static that sounds like a whisper just outside comprehension. You've heard it. You just didn't know what it was. Now you do. It was you. It still is. And if you ever remember what you said, if the full message returns, it might change everything or destroy it. So listen, carefully, because silence is not absence, it's waiting. What if the message wasn't made of words at all? What if it was emotion? A raw wave of feeling encoded into frequencies no human device could ever fully translate, but the universe could. A cry beyond grammar. A plea born of fear and destiny colliding. Somewhere, drifting between galaxies, that frequency still travels. Light years away, a dying star absorbs it. A black hole bends around it. A frozen world lets it pass through untouched. But somewhere, it landed. And it listened. Maybe not an alien species, not a civilization, but a presence, an awareness older than time, something vast, cold, curious. And when it heard your broadcast, it understood what most cannot, that to respond would collapse you, that to answer the call would shatter your sense of self. Because you didn't send that message from peace, you sent it from fracture. Your subconscious remembers, that strange sense of being watched, even when alone. The flicker in your dreams that feels like surveillance. The way animals sometimes stare at you too long, as if recognizing a signature. That's not paranoia. That's reception. Because sometimes the most merciful thing the universe can do is stay silent. But mercy has limits. One day the message might return, not as sound, but as experience. A person who says exactly what you need to hear, but too soon. A moment of perfect recognition you weren't ready for. A synchronicity that stabs instead of soothes. That's the reply. That's the echo bouncing back. And it might wake something in you. Something buried when the original message was sent. A truth you can no longer unknow. That you are not alone, never were. And that something ancient now marks your coordinates. This is why you begged for silence. Not to be ignored, but to be protected. Because the truth is, you weren't ready. But you might be now. Or you might already be unraveling. Because once the memory returns, once the full broadcast plays back in your mind, there's no unhearing it. You'll remember what you feared, what you sacrificed, and what you asked the universe to delay, but not deny. So listen, not with ears, but with awareness, with intuition, with the part of you that never forgets. Because the reply may already be here, in the hum of an empty room, in the flicker of a power outage, in a dream you mistake for déjà vu, and when it speaks again, if it speaks again, you'll know exactly what you said, and you'll know exactly why you asked them not to come. Emotional vaccination, paradox. What if every intense emotion you've ever felt, joy, grief, heartbreak, elation, was never entirely yours to begin with? What if those feelings were placed there, not by coincidence or chemistry, but through a hidden mechanism, not to manipulate you, but to inoculate you? Imagine every emotion as a carefully measured dose, an emotional vaccine to prepare your psyche for something vast and unspeakable. Not a disease of the body, but a catastrophe of the soul, your first heartbreak. That hollow throb in your chest that made breathing feel like betrayal. You thought you were dying. But months later, when disappointment returned with new faces and names, you endured. Slower tears, fewer nights awake. Not because you didn't care, but because your heart, like a trained immune system, had learned. Emotional antibodies. Now think bigger. What if all your life's most overwhelming emotional storms, devastation, rapture, humiliation, awe, were all engineered? A psychological immunity protocol built into the structure of your reality, not by therapists, not by gods, but by something older. A system so sophisticated that the very pain you tried to forget was part of its calibration. Remember being laughed at in a classroom, or rejected by someone you admired, or feeling invisible at your own celebration. Each of these moments left microfractures, but those fractures healed harder than before. Shame became manageable. Rejection became survivable. You became, slowly, immune. Even joy, yes, even joy, was part of the program. Remember the first time you felt it swell in your chest? Maybe after a childhood success, or a perfect evening under starlight. It felt infinite, untouchable. But every joy after that, smaller, duller. Like your system learned not to spike too high, as though pure elation was dangerous. And so, your subconscious began dosing it down. This is the emotional vaccination paradox. It proposes that your emotions are not just responses, they are treatments, injections. Each moment of despair a booster, each panic attack a test, each betrayal an update to your internal software, ensuring you're prepared for worse, for deeper, for stranger. Who's administering these doses? Some say it's evolution, that our brains learn to adapt, to build tolerance for psychological stress. But what if that's just the cover story? What if your reality is a training ground, a simulation, perhaps, not to test your intellect, but your emotional resilience? Because where you're going, raw emotion isn't a symptom, it's the environment. A realm where memories manifest as monsters, and unchecked feelings can consume or reshape your identity. In such a place, grief might materialize as storms, shame as gravity, anger as wildfire, and only those who have lived through this world, feeling everything, breaking, healing, and feeling again, will be able to survive without dissolving into madness. But emotional vaccines, like physical ones, have side effects. They might leave you numb, unreachable. They might distort your sense of real versus rehearsed. If every sorrow is a dose, if every celebration is a test, then what's real joy? What's authentic suffering? Are you the patient or the trial? And more disturbingly, if your emotional responses were calibrated, who calibrated them? Who decided how much grief you could bear before snapping? Who watched as your heart shattered and whispered, "Good, the dose is working"? Maybe it's not a who, maybe it's a what. A cosmic intelligence, or an emergent pattern within consciousness itself. Maybe emotions are not just feelings, but data, instructions, barriers and bridges at once. You're not a person navigating a life. You're a vessel designed to endure sequences of emotions, to pass through emotional thresholds few can even perceive. But here's the twist. If it's true, if your suffering was preparation, then that means it wasn't wasted. That pain wasn't punishment. It was refinement. The nights you couldn't sleep, training. The moments you felt worthless, calibration. Every instance when love slipped through your fingers was a reminder. You are being forged, tempered, not just to survive, but to become the kind of being that can exist in an emotional reality far stranger than this one. So, the next time your hands shake, the next time your tears won't stop, the next time joy feels too sharp or sadness feels too familiar, don't ask why it hurts. Ask what it's preparing you for, because someday soon the world may fall away, and you'll find yourself not in a void, but in a storm of pure feeling, where untrained minds dissolve, but not you. You were vaccinated, and every pain was proof. You are already surviving the war most don't know exists. You were never weak. You were just adapting. Imagine a being born into that place, where emotions are not personal quirks, but planetary forces, where guilt is an ocean and love is a sun that burns with too much closeness. To survive there, to even breathe, would require you to have endured all this. Earth, this place of subtle heartbreaks and small joys, wasn't the destination. It was the conditioning chamber. Maybe that's why children seem to carry so much feeling in such small frames. Why they cry with abandon and laugh like they'll never stop. Because they haven't yet been vaccinated. They're raw, exposed. They haven't been dosed with disappointment or layered with armor. And perhaps that's why, as we age, we lose the ability to feel things like we used to. We mistake it for growing up or losing our spark. But maybe it's the immunity kicking in, the emotional antibodies doing their job. This isn't a metaphor. It's a hypothesis that redefines everything about what it means to suffer and to heal. There's even a word for the final form of someone who's endured the full sequence of emotional vaccinations. A word we don't speak. Because it's not in any language. It's an echo, buried in your DNA. A name you'll only remember when the final dose is administered. And when it is, when your system registers that final calibrated frequency, fear, love, loneliness, awe, all in balance, all experienced and understood, something will unlock. And that locked door, it's not in the sky, it's inside you. The question is, what's waiting behind it? Something that only you can face. Because only you were vaccinated enough to survive it. This is the emotional vaccination paradox. The past life misdirection. You've felt it before. That flicker. That moment where the world slows down and something inside you whispers, I've been here. The smell. The light. The way someone turns their head. It strikes like lightning across your soul, and you say the same thing every time. Déjà vu. You chalk it up to a past life, a spiritual glitch, a memory slipping between lifetimes. But what if that's the lie? What if déjà vu isn't from a life you've lived before, but from a life you haven't lived yet? This is the past life misdirection. The idea that what you call spiritual memory isn't the past breaking through. It's the future reaching back. A warning. A whisper. A signal from the version of you who has already lived this moment and knows where it leads. They've made the choice, felt the consequences, and now they're screaming through time to stop you from making it too. Let's break this open. Déjà vu has baffled scientists and mystics alike. The brain misfires, they say, a short circuit between short-term and long-term memory. You register a moment in two parts of the brain at once, and it feels like a memory when it's not. But that doesn't explain the emotion. Why does déjà vu sometimes come with panic? Why do some moments feel urgent, as if something enormous is about to happen? Why do people feel compelled to stop, to change, to listen? Because something is trying to reach you, but not the you in this moment, the you in the next, or 5 years from now, or at the end of a road you haven't even seen yet. This future version of you has lived through a moment that broke everything. A word said too late, a turn not taken, a regret that echoes like thunder. And in that future, maybe science evolved, maybe time bent, maybe consciousness expanded just enough to bleed backward. And in their last breath of freedom, they reached out. But they couldn't send words, couldn't scream across dimensions. All they could do was pulse a feeling, a shiver, a ripple, a pattern of neurons vibrating in the right way, at the right time. And your body felt it. You knew it. Déjà vu. But instead of listening, you labeled it. Past life. Coincidence. Glitch. You brushed it off, and the message was lost. And that's the misdirection. The tragedy isn't just that we ignored déjà vu. It's that we've misunderstood it for centuries. We made it mystical, romantic, something to ponder in silence. But it's not a poem, it's a siren, and we're sleeping through it. Think about this. If time isn't linear, if every moment is layered like pages in a book, then our future selves aren't far away. They're next to us, screaming from the next chapter. And déjà vu is where the ink bleeds through. Sometimes you feel it before an accident, before you say something you can't take back, before you walk into a room where everything changes. You feel it because you've already been through it, in a different line. A parallel self who lived through the fire and is begging you not to touch the flame. And the more you ignore the signal, the louder it gets. That's why some people feel déjà vu in loops, moments repeating, scenes you can't escape. It's not your mind breaking, it's your future insisting, warning you that this pattern is a dead end. But here's the catch. The message can only be felt, not explained. Because if you knew too much, you'd destroy the timeline you came from. You'd erase the one trying to reach you. The paradox would collapse everything. So all they can do is pulse emotion, familiarity, fear, urgency, and maybe hope. Because the future isn't always dark. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes the version of you reaching back survived. They found peace. They made the right choice. And now, in a surge of gratitude, they send the feeling backward, not as a warning, but as a blessing. A reminder that you're on the right path, that you've been here before, and this time, you're doing it right. So the next time you feel it, that sudden electric "I've been here," stop. Don't speak. Don't dismiss. Just listen. Because someone is trying to reach you, and they've already lived what you're about to face, and they're begging you not to make the same mistake. The happiness threshold. Collapse. What if your happiest moment already happened, and you didn't even know it? According to the theory of the happiness threshold collapse, you reached your emotional peak around the age of 9. Every surge of joy you've felt since then, a diluted echo, a faint memory of something purer, more innocent, more complete. You keep chasing happiness not to find something new, but to return to a state your mind can no longer access. It's a disturbing idea that there was a point in your life, before stress, before shame, before the adult world, with a neurological and emotional balance so perfect that everything since has felt slightly off. A slow drift downward disguised as growth. Children experience happiness differently. Their brains are neurochemically optimized for wonder. Dopamine hits from small things, ice cream, cartoons, blowing bubbles, feel monumental. Every sensation is new, unfiltered. Reality hasn't been tamed or boxed in by experience yet. There is no backlog of disappointment, no skepticism, no pressure to make the moment worth it. Joy just happens. It arrives, and it's full. But as you grow, something shifts. Your baseline climbs, not emotionally but cognitively. You need more to feel the same, more success, more excitement, more risk, more validation, because your brain has adapted. What once thrilled you now barely registers. That's the threshold collapse, and it's invisible, until one day you wonder why nothing makes you feel the way childhood did. This isn't just philosophy, it's biology. Studies show that as we age, our dopamine systems become less sensitive. The reward signals that once lit up your brain like fireworks now flicker like dying bulbs. You're not broken, you're aging. The highs get dimmer, not because life has less to offer, but because your brain needs more to feel less. Think about your happiest memories. Really think. Chances are, they're tied not to extravagant events, but to small sensory experiences in youth. Riding a bike down a hill, running barefoot on grass, building pillow forts, laughing at absolutely nothing, and most importantly, feeling safe, seen, and unburdened. Those moments didn't need context. They weren't weighed down by ambition or self-image. You weren't chasing meaning. You were simply present. And presence is something adulthood drains from us. You chase big milestones, careers, relationships, money, legacy, but the emotional return keeps shrinking. A promotion feels good for a day. A vacation feels magical until you return. A party feels fun until you're scrolling through photos, trying to convince yourself it was better than it felt. You aren't feeling joy. You're managing its simulation. That's why nostalgia hits so hard. It's not the memory itself, it's the echo of the way it felt. You're not just remembering a time, you're mourning a chemical state you'll never fully feel again. And here's the painful paradox. You might have already hit your happiness peak, and then spent the rest of your life trying to surpass it, only to realize that joy doesn't scale. It doesn't mature with you. It doesn't evolve. It just fades. And yet, we build entire lives, entire societies, on the promise of increasing happiness. We tell children, just wait until you grow up. But the truth is, their capacity for joy is something we envy, something we lost. And no one told us the trade. No one said that adult happiness is maintenance, not magic. That pleasure becomes comparative, fleeting, negotiated. And even when it arrives, we analyze it, distrust it, try to pin it down like a butterfly, only to find it dead in our hands. But what if this collapse isn't a failure, but a transformation? Maybe we're not meant to chase the same kind of happiness forever. Maybe joy, as we knew it, dissolves so that something else can emerge. Contentment, meaning, connection. These may not spike your dopamine, but they hold you. They tether you. They anchor a soul that no longer floats in the clouds of childish bliss. Still, it's okay to grieve that purity. To admit that somewhere in your neural circuitry is a golden age you can't return to, and that every smile now is a little heavier, a little quieter, but also more deliberate. You can't recreate 9-year-old joy, but you can build peace around its absence, because maybe the goal isn't to feel the same as you did back then. Maybe the goal is to accept the echo and still let it move you. So, the next time you laugh and it feels quieter than you remember, or when happiness arrives but slips through your fingers before you can hold it, don't panic. Don't chase harder. Just pause. Because that faint echo you're feeling isn't a failure. It's proof that you once felt something beautiful, raw, and real, and that it still lives inside you, even if only as a ghost. Your brain has aged, your heart has learned, your eyes have seen too much to be shocked by fireworks, but there's still a kind of joy that belongs to now. It's quieter, wiser. It doesn't scream, it hums. So let yourself miss the lightning, but learn to love the candle. And when the world tells you that more will make you feel better, remember, the richest happiness may not be louder. It may just be deeper. Because even if your threshold collapsed, the ground beneath it was always yours. And sometimes, the echo is enough to remind you you were once lit from within. The cosmic joke theory. What if your entire life, every choice, every heartbreak, every moment of revelation, wasn't leading to some divine truth, but a punchline? What if you are the punchline? This is the cosmic joke theory. The unsettling idea that humanity isn't at the center of the universe because of destiny or divinity, but because we're part of a galactic joke, a story told once every 1,000 years. And the worst part? We haven't heard the setup. Imagine a species beyond comprehension, a race of beings older than stars, vast in thought and subtle in cruelty. They gather once every millennium, not for war, not for worship, but for humor. They tell stories across galaxies, not through sound, but through existence. And somewhere, our planet is the punchline. You felt it. That deep, gnawing sense that something about existence is off. Like we're missing a context. Like there's a laugh track we can't hear, but we're always walking into its rhythm. Every time a miracle ends in tragedy, every time a dream collapses the moment it's born, every absurd contradiction of life, it doesn't feel random. It feels timed. Think of our most primal beliefs. That we're special, that consciousness is sacred, that love matters. What if those beliefs aren't truths, but bait? Hooks in a story written for someone else's amusement. Our myths, our philosophies, our search for purpose. What if they're the setup? 1,000 years of yearning, all for a punchline no one on Earth understands. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Humans laugh when the unexpected twists the expected. When the serious becomes absurd, when something noble ends in ridiculous collapse. What if the cosmos finds us funny for the same reason? Not because we're failures, but because we try so hard not to be. We build religions on doubt, empires on sand, identities on memory, and futures on fear. We obsess over status while floating on a rock spinning in blackness. We invent meaning in chaos and cry when it slips through our hands. We are the most beautiful contradiction ever scripted. And maybe that's hilarious. Maybe somewhere, alien minds are watching Earth like a living stand-up routine, not mocking us, but marveling. Because we don't know it's a joke, because we mean every word, because we keep trying. And then there's the darker possibility. What if one of us did hear the setup? What if a prophet, a madman, a child once glimpsed the entire joke at once and couldn't stop laughing? What if enlightenment isn't peace, but hysterical, cosmic laughter echoing through a fragile mind? It would explain why wisdom often looks like madness, why those who see too much seem broken. They've heard the setup. They know the joke is coming. And they know we won't get it until it's too late. But is that despair or freedom? If life is a joke, then nothing is sacred, and everything is. Every act of kindness becomes rebellion. Every burst of creativity becomes divine. Every failure becomes a setup for a better laugh. If we are the punchline, we are also the performers. The universe may have cast us in a comedy, but we get to choose how loud the laugh is. So what do you do with that truth? You laugh, you cry, you stumble forward anyway. Because maybe the point isn't to escape the joke. It's to tell one back, to turn the absurd into art, to make the stars laugh with us, not at us. And maybe, one day, we'll hear the whole setup. And maybe it'll break our hearts. Or maybe, just maybe, it'll be the funniest thing we've ever known. And in that moment, we'll understand. We were never the victims. We were always the punchline and the delivery. And the universe? It wasn't mocking us. It was waiting for us to laugh first. Consider the strange coincidences of life. The fact that we can predict eclipses centuries in advance, yet can't predict our own happiness tomorrow. That we build machines capable of calculating billions of operations per second, yet can't calculate why we lie awake at 3 a.m. wondering if we matter. This asymmetry isn't a flaw. It's the setup. We love stories with meaning, we crave resolution. But the universe resists both. It offers synchronicity with no context, meaning with no author. It's like someone handed us the final scene of a film with no beginning and asked us to laugh, cry, and understand. We improvise, we pretend, we assign purpose to the randomness because not doing so would tear us apart. But what if that's exactly what the audience, whoever they are, is watching for? What if the joke isn't on us? It is us. The human ability to construct meaning in chaos may be the very thing that makes us worth watching. Not gods, not geniuses, but tragic comedians performing under the illusion of purpose. And maybe that's not a curse. In a universe filled with cold, lifeless rocks, we feel. We bleed, we mourn, we laugh. We turn agony into music, loneliness into poetry, death into ritual. Even if it's a joke, we tell it beautifully. And the universe? Maybe it laughs not out of cruelty, but gratitude. Because we bring color to its indifference. Because we are the unexpected. A species that dreams while dying. That dances while decaying. That builds while breaking. The cosmic joke isn't that we're meaningless, it's that we keep acting like we're not. And in that contradiction is grace. So keep living like the setup matters, because maybe, just maybe, the punchline isn't the end. Maybe it's the start of something only laughter can open. The lost chapter dilemma. You ever wake up feeling like something's gone missing? Something not just forgotten, but erased? You can't name it, can't describe it, but it haunts you like a ghost made of silence. You go through the motions, work, friends, family, yet something doesn't quite connect. There's a gap. Not a memory, but a momentum that's been severed, like your life was telling a story, and someone ripped out a chapter. Not at the beginning, not at the end. Somewhere in the middle. And now, every day feels like a sentence that starts in the wrong paragraph. You mention it to people, this sense of a lost time, and they blink at you, confused. Maybe you're just tired, they say. Or, you've always been like this. But that's not true, is it? You remember being different. Not better, just whole. You remember a time when joy felt round, not hollow, when your laugh didn't feel rehearsed, when someone meant something, or someone was there, and now they're gone. But not in a way anyone else seems to notice. You check old photos, scroll through social media, your journals, texts, even dreams, and nothing confirms it. But that only deepens the dread, because it's not just the absence that hurts. It's the fact that reality has compensated. Your past has been edited, rearranged to cover up a wound it refuses to admit. Somewhere, buried under the static of your mind, is the truth. Your life had a chapter that's now missing. Maybe it was a relationship, a moment of clarity, a decision you made that changed everything, but now never happened. Maybe it was a person whose name your tongue almost remembers. Maybe you loved them. Maybe they loved you. Maybe that chapter held the version of you that was most alive, and now that version of you is locked in a story that no one else is even reading. You look around at the world and realize everyone's too sure of their timelines, too confident that things are exactly how they're supposed to be. But if you squint just right, if you stand in a doorway, if you wake in the middle of the night, if you catch the flicker of an old TV screen, you can feel the edge of that lost chapter, brushing up against your skin like static. It's not just nostalgia, it's displacement, a grief with no body, a longing for a moment you were meant to live, but didn't. What if that chapter was stolen? Not metaphorically, but actually removed. What if reality edits itself? What if your timeline collapsed in on itself during a dream or while you were unconscious for just a second? What if the universe rewrote your path and you're the only one who noticed the typo? Scientists have speculated about false memories, about glitches in consciousness, about multiverses brushing against each other like pages in a book too tightly bound. But this isn't a theory. It's a sensation, a knowing, the kind that lives in your bones, not your brain. The kind of truth that's only spoken in dreams or through déjà vu. You walk into a bookstore and feel the tug of a title you've never read but somehow know. You pass a stranger and almost say their name. You cry during a song that doesn't remind you of anything, except something you can't place. The echoes are everywhere, whispers of a life that almost was, that should have been. Maybe you were on a different path, one where that chapter unfolded, one where you made the choice that led to love, or loss, or revelation. Maybe the world ended for just a moment, and when it restarted, it forgot to carry you forward. You're the leftover punctuation from a sentence that got deleted, a character wandering off script, looking for a page that doesn't exist anymore. And yet, you persist. The lost chapter aches inside you, like phantom pain, but it's also proof. Proof that something real was there, that you were more than this version of yourself. That maybe, just maybe, you can find a way to write it back in. Maybe the chapter's not gone, just misplaced, buried in the folds of dreams or locked behind the eyes of someone else who feels the same emptiness. Maybe you'll meet them. Maybe they'll remember too. And when your timelines align for just a second, maybe you'll both say, "There you are, I've been looking for you." And in that instant, the story continues. Observer's decay principle. Imagine a world where you're always being watched, not just by cameras, not just by people, but by something more omnipresent, an algorithm, a judgmental society, a silent divine gaze. The watchers are everywhere, and they're always awake. They see your smile, your silence, your stumbles. They see what you say and what you don't. They monitor your actions, but more than that, they monitor your intentions. And with every glance they cast, a piece of your true self begins to erode. This is the observer's decay principle, the haunting idea that the more you're observed, the more your authentic self deteriorates. Not through malice, not through attack, but through the quiet pressure of constant performance. Because no one is designed to be watched forever. It starts subtly. You shift your posture, you speak more clearly, you smile wider, you become more agreeable. You're trying to be understood, or liked, or approved. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you stop being real. You become optimized, curated, palatable. This is performance creep. You adapt for social media, for the office, for your partner, for your parents. You morph, moment by moment, into the person you think they want. A mask over your soul. A costume stitched from approval. And every performance you deliver pushes the real you a little further into the shadows. At first, it feels like control, but it's not. It's erosion. Psychologists call this the Hawthorne effect. People modify behavior simply because they know they're being watched. In the short term, productivity rises, smiles appear, people comply. But the deeper cost is identity fatigue. You forget who you are when no one's watching, because no one ever stops watching. Social media compounds it. Every post, every comment, every image is tracked, measured, and fed back to you in a distorted mirror. Algorithms reward predictability, outrage, beauty, conformity, and you adapt. You filter your thoughts before you even think them. You ask, what would go viral, before asking, what do I believe? Surveillance capitalism has made your soul monetizable. Every click you make, every word you type, is part of your permanent performance file. Even silence becomes a statement. Inaction becomes a stance. And you live like a character in a story you didn't write, performing for an audience you don't trust. But it's not just systems. It's people. You're watched by coworkers, family, strangers in line. Eyes on your clothes, your weight, your speech, your choices. You wear personas like armor. You trade vulnerability for likability. And the tragedy is, every act of self-preservation becomes an act of self-destruction. Even God is a watcher in this paradigm. For some, Divine observation offers comfort, a promise that someone sees their pain. But for others, it's a trap, a surveillance that never sleeps, a morality under spotlight. You pray not because you believe, but because you're afraid not to. That's not faith, that's fear in disguise. And when you internalize it, when you adopt the gaze of the watcher, you no longer need them around. You become your own prison guard. Every decision runs through an invisible court. Every instinct gets filtered through judgment. You become the algorithm. You become the god. You become the cage. And your real self, it starves in the dark. Studies show that being watched, even by a photograph of eyes, can raise stress levels, alter decisions, reduce risk-taking. Observation limits freedom. It hardens behavior. And over time, that hardened shell becomes your only reality. You forget how to laugh freely, how to speak without editing, how to move without adjusting. You forget the sound of your own unsupervised thoughts. But somewhere, deep inside you, is the version of yourself that existed before the world installed cameras in your soul. A version that didn't know what was appropriate or impressive. A version that danced terribly, spoke clumsily, cried openly, and lived truly. To find them again, you must shut the watchers out. Not just the external ones, but the ones you've built inside your own mind. Turn away from the algorithm. Turn away from the crowd. Even turn away from the God that never lets you be imperfect. Because to be real, you must first be unseen. Sometimes it takes going dark, disappearing from the timelines, from the mirrors, from the gaze of others, to return to yourself. That doesn't mean isolation, it means recalibration. Go where no one can measure you. Write things no one will read. Say things no one will praise. Breathe in silence until the need to perform dies. Only then will you feel the pulse of the self you buried. And maybe that's the true rebellion in a world of watchers. Not to hide, but to become unwatchable. To think things too strange for trend. To dream too wide for algorithms. To move in ways that don't translate into metrics. Because once you reclaim your unfiltered thoughts, your private truths, your sacred imperfections, you stop decaying. You start becoming. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of cameras, beyond the eyes of critics, beyond the weight of expectation, a real version of you waits, untouched, and they are not performing. They are simply living. Puzzle mind, disintegration. What if you were never truly you to begin with? Not because of destiny, not because of fate, but because your mind was tampered with in ways so subtle, so gradual, you didn't even notice the theft? Imagine your consciousness as a 1,000-piece puzzle, each piece a formative memory, a learned response, a raw emotion, a sensory imprint, a belief carved into you through time. Now, imagine that 50 of those pieces were swapped out, not replaced with blanks, but with near-perfect imitations, changed by moments you thought were minor, switched during trauma you buried, distorted by memories you misremembered or were forced to forget. You are haunted, not by ghosts, but by fragments that no longer belong to you. That moment in second grade where you spoke the truth and got punished for it. A piece changed. The heartbreak you never processed at 16. Another warped fragment. The silent betrayal by someone you trusted. The toxic job that reshaped how you see your worth. Bit by bit, piece by piece, the original you was modified, until the edges stopped fitting and the picture lost its clarity. And the scariest part? You continued forward as if nothing happened. You learned to adjust. You called it growth. You dismissed it as just life. But sometimes you feel it, don't you? That low hum of inner static when you try to remember who you were before the fear, before the loss, before you became cautious of your own impulses. That friction when your current behavior contradicts your deepest instincts. And yet you comply because it feels safer to obey the rewired pattern than to challenge it. Your dreams try to remind you. They speak in twisted symbols, staircases to nowhere, locked doors, forgotten languages. They're trying to tell you what you once knew, that there is a version of you buried underneath this compromise, a self that still screams in silence every time you ignore your intuition. This isn't metaphysical. This is neurological. Memories don't just fade, they reconfigure. Emotional trauma reshapes brain pathways. Repetition creates illusions of truth. You repeat lies about yourself often enough, and they calcify into facts. Every time you tell yourself you're not good enough, not lovable, not worthy, You are adding glue to one of those foreign puzzle pieces, securing it tighter, making it harder to recognize the swap. And society doesn't help. The world rewards the fragment itself. It celebrates those who abandon their edges to fit inside predetermined shapes. It calls it professionalism, maturity, realism. But what if your realism is just your resignation? What if you are living a version of your life optimized for someone else's comfort? Sometimes you catch a glimpse of the original picture in music that moves you for no logical reason, in smells that trigger emotions you can't place, in moments of déjà vu that leave your heart racing. You remember what it felt like to be whole, not because you were perfect, but because you were intact. You made sense to yourself, but now you perform, you curate, you filter, you survive. The puzzle is functional, but it's not you. So what can you do? Can you replace the stolen pieces? Not exactly, but you can start identifying the false ones. Begin by noticing the beliefs that drain you, that silence you, that shame you. Ask who taught you that. Ask what moment planted it. Was it love? Or fear? Was it truth? Or control? You won't find all the answers. Some pieces are buried too deep, but you can begin rewriting the image. You can create new pieces, not to restore the past, but to reclaim the future. You can choose colors and contours that match the rhythm of your authentic self, even if you no longer remember what that looked like. And piece by piece, you can build something else. Not a perfect puzzle, but a mosaic, a hybrid of who you were and who you've survived to become. You are not broken. You are encrypted. And maybe, just maybe, this distortion is what makes you powerful, because those who've been shattered and rebuilt don't fear collapse. They know the map of their mind's wreckage. They know how to build again, differently, intentionally. So, no, you may never be whole in the way you once were, but you can be something rarer. You can be aware. You can be the observer who sees the false puzzle pieces and names them. You can be the architect who crafts new ones from truth, from love, from deliberate experience. You can be real, not by being complete, but by being awake to the mystery of your own construction. And in that, you become untouchable, not because you've healed every fracture, but because you now know where every fracture lies. The simulator's boredom. Imagine this. Deep within your consciousness, buried beneath layers of polite smiles, forgotten dreams, and repressed confessions, lies a tomb, a crypt carved not from stone, but from silence. This is the tomb of thoughts. It's real, not metaphorical, because every time you suppressed a scream, every insult you never flung, every truth you swallowed, you didn't erase those moments, you buried them, and they remember. These censored thoughts, these fragments of raw, uncensored truth, don't vanish. Neurologically, suppression does not mean deletion. Instead, the brain stores suppressed thoughts in what's known as the inhibitory control network. Like ghosts sealed behind a locked door, they wait. You may think you're free from them during the day, but night doesn't abide by censorship. At night, the tomb opens. During REM sleep, when your brain is at its most active and your defenses are down, those buried thoughts begin to rise. Have you ever jolted awake from a dream so uncomfortable, so brutally honest, that you couldn't speak about it? That was no random neural misfire. That was your mind, finally releasing what you refused to face. Think about the memory you regret most, the fight you lost, the insult you held back, the apology you never gave. They're all down there, and some of them, no matter how long it's been, still whisper to be let out. Consider this. Studies on thought rebound have shown that the more you try not to think about something, like a breakup, a trauma, a shameful moment, the more power you give it. It becomes like a pressure cooker, and the brain, when dreaming, vents that steam. This explains the dreams you can't explain, the ones filled with symbolic horror or unexplained familiarity. You've likely walked through this mental tomb before. A house with too many doors, a field where the wind sounds like screaming, a city where the lights flicker like memories. All metaphors stitched together by your unconscious, trying to map the graveyard you built thought by thought. The truth is, the brain isn't designed to forget what's important. It's designed to protect you, even from yourself. But this protection is a double-edged sword, because those suppressed thoughts, the jealousies, the lusts, the rage, the despair, don't disappear. They simply wait. They become dreams, intrusive thoughts, sudden emotional breakdowns that don't make sense. Ever had a random moment of rage you couldn't trace? Or a breakdown in a grocery aisle over nothing? That was a thought you buried clawing its way back up. Even in therapy, these thoughts resist emergence. They shift. They lie. They dress themselves in safer narratives. But, deep down, you always know when something you're saying isn't quite the full truth, because you feel it under the surface, pulsing like a trapped animal. And the longer you deny them, the louder they get. That's why some people can't sleep without music, or a TV, or why some fear silence. Not because it's empty, but because it's too full. In silence, the tomb creaks. The thoughts you buried come scratching at the walls. This isn't fiction. Neuroscientists confirm that the medial prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-reflection and suppression, remains active during both meditation and mind wandering. And in those moments of calm, what surfaces? Guilt, anger, memories you thought you'd forgotten, the tomb again. There is no closure until you open the gate yourself. But here's the terrifying part. The longer a thought remains buried, the more distorted it becomes. Like a body decaying without air, it loses shape. Truth becomes nightmare. Clarity becomes chaos. That's why you can dream of arguing with someone you haven't seen in years, because the version of them you buried with that thought is still rotting inside you, still unspoken, still unresolved. It's why suppressed trauma never ages. Why something from childhood can still make a grown adult weep. The past doesn't stay behind you when you drag its ghosts forward in silence. So, what can you do? You visit the tomb. You let one thought out at a time. You write the letter you'll never send. You say the name you pretend you've forgotten. You let yourself scream when no one is listening. You acknowledge, even for a moment, that you're not just made of what you've done, but also what you've refused to do. The tomb of thoughts doesn't have to be your prison, but it will be, if you never turn around and face it. And maybe, just maybe, when you do, those thoughts won't be monsters anymore. They'll just be broken versions of you, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be heard. Tonight, as you lie in the dark, listen closely. That sound you mistake for the wind, that weight behind your eyes, it's them, the thoughts you buried, and they're rising again. Let's go further. Imagine a child who is told not to cry. Every time tears threaten to fall, they swallow them, swallowing emotion, identity, and voice. That child becomes an adult who doesn't know how to grieve, not because they lack sorrow, but because their grief is buried. And when that adult lies awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling with a tightness in their chest and no words to explain it, that's the tomb again. Picture someone standing in front of a mirror, practicing what they should have said in an argument. The words flow so perfectly now, but back then, fear strangled them. That moment becomes a monument in their mental graveyard. They visit it more often than they realize, not with flowers, but with regret. The human mind stores more than memories. It stores versions of ourselves. Each unspoken truth, each avoided confrontation, each dream abandoned due to fear, they're all fragments of the person we could have become, and they mourn, in silence, until the night comes. And in the night, the rules of language shift. Your brain no longer asks for permission. It conjures metaphors. You're being chased, you're falling, you're drowning, but in truth, you're not being hunted by a beast. You're being chased by something truer, yourself, unfiltered. Repression is a learned survival tactic. But what if survival slowly erodes the soul? What if each time we censor a real thought, we disconnect from something primal, our truth? Even artists, poets, and philosophers have danced with their tombs. Franz Kafka wrote letters he never sent. Emily Dickinson kept verses locked in drawers. They all knew. Some thoughts are too dangerous for daylight, but they refuse to die in the dark. Modern science backs this with shocking clarity. Studies using fMRI scans show that suppressed thoughts activate the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the same region involved in memory manipulation and impulse control. We are literally altering reality inside our heads to preserve an illusion of peace. But that peace is not peace. It is pause. Sooner or later, the unspoken thoughts become symptoms: panic, insomnia, explosive emotions, physical illness without cause. That is the mind rebelling against its own silence. And so, the next time you dream of screaming with no voice, or searching for a room that doesn't exist, or facing a reflection that isn't you, know this. It's not just a dream. It's a message. The tomb is open, and something you buried long ago is asking, begging to be seen again. Tomb of thoughts. Imagine this. Deep within your consciousness, buried beneath layers of polite smiles, forgotten dreams, and repressed confessions, lies a tomb, a crypt carved not from stone, but from silence. This is the tomb of thoughts. It's real, not metaphorical. Because every time you suppressed a scream, every insult you never flung, every truth you swallowed, you didn't erase those moments. You buried them, and they remember. These censored thoughts, these fragments of raw, uncensored truth, don't vanish. Neurologically, suppression does not mean deletion. Instead, the brain stores suppressed thoughts in what's known as the inhibitory control network. Like ghosts sealed behind a locked door, they wait. You may think you're free from them during the day, but night doesn't abide by censorship. At night, the tomb opens. During REM sleep, when your brain is at its most active and your defenses are down, those buried thoughts begin to rise. Have you ever jolted awake from a dream so uncomfortable, so brutally honest, that you couldn't speak about it? That was no random neural misfire. That was your mind, finally releasing what you refused to face. Think about the memory you regret most, the fight you lost, the insult you held back, the apology you never gave. They're all down there. And some of them, no matter how long it's been, still whisper to be let out. Consider this. Studies on thought rebound have shown that the more you try not to think about something, like a breakup, a trauma, a shameful moment, the more power you give it. It becomes like a pressure cooker, and the brain, when dreaming, vents that steam. This explains the dreams you can't explain, the ones filled with symbolic horror or unexplained familiarity. You've likely walked through this mental tomb before, a house with too many doors, a field where the wind sounds like screaming, a city where the lights flicker like memories, all metaphors stitched together by your unconscious, trying to map the graveyard you built, thought by thought. The truth is, the brain isn't designed to forget what's important. It's designed to protect you, even from yourself. But this protection is a double-edged sword, because those suppressed thoughts, the jealousies, the lusts, the rage, the despair, don't disappear. They simply wait. They become dreams, intrusive thoughts, sudden emotional breakdowns that don't make sense. Ever had a random moment of rage you couldn't trace? Or a breakdown in a grocery aisle over nothing? That was a thought you buried clawing its way back up. Even in therapy, these thoughts resist emergence. They shift, they lie, they dress themselves in safer narratives. But, deep down, you always know when something you're saying isn't quite the full truth, because you feel it under the surface, pulsing like a trapped animal. And the longer you deny them, the louder they get. That's why some people can't sleep without music, or a TV, or why some fear silence. Not because it's empty, but because it's too full. In silence, the tomb creaks. The thoughts you buried come scratching at the walls. This isn't fiction. Neuroscientists confirm that the medial prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-reflection and suppression, remains active during both meditation and mind wandering. And in those moments of calm, what surfaces? Guilt, anger, memories you thought you'd forgotten, the tomb again. There is no closure until you open the gate yourself. But here's the terrifying part. The longer a thought remains buried, the more distorted it becomes. Like a body decaying without air, it loses shape. Truth becomes nightmare. Clarity becomes chaos. That's why you can dream of arguing with someone you haven't seen in years. Because the version of them you buried with that thought is still rotting inside you, still unspoken, still unresolved. It's why suppressed trauma never ages, why something from childhood can still make a grown adult weep. The past doesn't stay behind you when you drag its ghosts forward in silence. So what can you do? You visit the tomb. You let one thought out at a time. You write the letter you'll never send. You say the name you pretend you've forgotten. You let yourself scream when no one is listening. You acknowledge, even for a moment, that you're not just made of what you've done, but also what you've refused to do. The tomb of thoughts doesn't have to be your prison, but it will be if you never turn around and face it. And maybe, just maybe, when you do, those thoughts won't be monsters anymore. They'll just be broken versions of you, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be heard. Tonight, as you lie in the dark, listen closely. That sound you mistake for the wind, that weight behind your eyes, it's them, the thoughts you buried, and they're rising again. Let's go further. Imagine a child who is told not to cry. Every time tears threaten to fall, they swallow them, swallowing emotion, identity, and voice. That child becomes an adult who doesn't know how to grieve, not because they lack sorrow, but because their grief is buried. And when that adult lies awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling with a tightness in their chest and no words to explain it, that's the tomb again. Picture someone standing in front of a mirror, practicing what they should have said in an argument. The words flow so perfectly now, but back then, fear strangled them. That moment becomes a monument in their mental graveyard. They visit it more often than they realize, not with flowers, but with regret. The human mind stores more than memories. It stores versions of ourselves. Each unspoken truth, each avoided confrontation, each dream abandoned due to fear. They're all fragments of the person we could have become, and they mourn, in silence, until the night comes. And in the night, the rules of language shift. Your brain no longer asks for permission. It conjures metaphors. You're being chased. You're falling. You're drowning. But in truth, you're not being hunted by a beast. You're being chased by something truer, yourself, unfiltered. Repression is a learned survival tactic. But what if survival slowly erodes the soul? What if each time we censor a real thought, we disconnect from something primal, our truth? Even artists, poets, and philosophers have danced with their tombs. Franz Kafka wrote letters he never sent. Emily Dickinson kept verses locked in drawers. They all knew. Some thoughts are too dangerous for daylight, but they refuse to die in the dark. Modern science backs this with shocking clarity. Studies using fMRI scans show that suppressed thoughts activate the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the same region involved in memory manipulation and impulse control. We are literally altering reality inside our heads to preserve an illusion of peace. But that peace is not peace, it is pause. Sooner or later, the unspoken thoughts become symptoms: panic, insomnia, explosive emotions, physical illness without cause. That is the mind rebelling against its own silence. And so, the next time you dream of screaming with no voice, or searching for a room that doesn't exist, or facing a reflection that isn't you, know this: it's not just a dream, it's a message. The tomb is open, and something you buried long ago is asking, begging to be seen again. The ladder that forgets. Imagine a ladder. Each rung you climb isn't just a step forward, it's a burial site, a quiet funeral for the version of you that existed before the ascent. This is not metaphor. This is how your identity works in real time. The ladder that forgets is not just poetic, it is psychological reality. We change constantly, but we rarely acknowledge what's left behind. Think back to who you were 10 years ago. Not just what you wore or what music you liked, but how you thought, what you feared, who you loved. Can you say you are still that person? Or did you shed them, like a skin, to wear the newer, shinier version of yourself? Now, take this further. What if that past version of you didn't just fade internally, but externally too? What if the world started forgetting them along with you? This is the terrifying core of the ladder that forgets. Each time you grow, each time you evolve, a psychic tether to your former self snaps. Friends from that era slowly stop responding. Places you used to haunt feel alien. Photos look like someone else entirely. And sometimes, it's more literal. People genuinely don't recall things you remember vividly. It's as if your presence was edited out of their past. Real psychological studies support this. Memory is reconstructive. Our brains don't store perfect records. They recreate the past using fragments and bias. As your identity changes, so does your memory. Even worse, so does theirs. Collective memory drifts, and you, who were once a chapter, become a footnote, or worse, a blank page. Now, imagine turning back, climbing down the ladder, going back to your childhood home, your first school, your old neighborhood. You expect nostalgia. Instead, you're greeted with confusion. People stare at you like you don't belong. Former classmates struggle to remember your name, that store owner who once gave you free candy. He doesn't recognize your face. You say your name, and it echoes hollow. This isn't selective memory. This is identity erosion. There's a reason people fear reunions. Not because they don't want to reconnect, but because the version of them who belonged there is dead. Gone. Replaced. And the people they're reconnecting with, they've climbed their own ladders too. Their memories of you are tied to their past selves, selves they no longer inhabit. It's not personal. It's cognitive physics. Now imagine if you kept climbing forever, reinventing, rebooting, rebranding. How many past selves have you burned to fuel your rise? And if you looked back, really looked, how many of them are waiting at the base of the ladder? Faces blurred, hands reaching up, begging not to be forgotten. That's the thing about transformation. It's not free. Every rung has a cost, and most of us pay it with memory. You grow by forgetting. But here's the horror. What if someone climbed so far that they became completely unrecognizable even to themselves, that their current life is built on the bones of 1,000 dead versions of who they used to be? How do you grieve something you don't remember losing? Some people have experienced this in microform. It's called disassociation. One day you wake up and your life feels foreign, not because it's new, but because you have changed so many times. Your internal continuity has cracked. You don't feel like the protagonist anymore. You feel like a character dropped into someone else's script. And the worst part? No one notices, because they're doing it too. We're all climbing, all leaving parts of ourselves behind. But what if those parts, remember? What if the selves we abandon form a mental graveyard inside us? One that stirs at night, when the world is quiet. You lie in bed and feel a hollow ache. That's not anxiety. That's a forgotten version of you, grieving its own erasure. And now let's go one layer deeper. What if the ladder that forgets isn't just psychological, but metaphysical? What if reality itself forgets you as you climb? Every time you evolve, you slip into a slightly different timeline. In each one, people remember you less. You grow sharper, more defined, but more alone, until finally, you reach the top. You've become the person you were always meant to be, and no one remembers you ever existed. Not your friends, not your family, not even the world, just you and the ladder. And even that eventually will vanish. So next time you feel the urge to change, to grow, to ascend, pause. Not to stop yourself, but to say goodbye. To whisper thank you to the version of you you're leaving behind. Because even if no one else remembers them, they deserve to be mourned. And if one night you feel a presence beside you in the dark, don't be afraid. It's just one of your forgotten selves, sitting quietly, waiting to be acknowledged, not to haunt you, but to be seen. Because even a forgotten self remembers what it felt like, to be you. Because here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Growth isn't always clean. Sometimes it's jagged. Sometimes it's cruel. And sometimes, in our pursuit to become better, stronger, more successful, we amputate parts of our soul, not out of malice, out of necessity, but those fragments still breathe somewhere deep inside, hoping, aching to be remembered, even if just once, in the silence between who you were and who you've become. Precision reincarnation, paradox. You wake up. The light hits your eyes just right. A word echoes in your mind, a word you've never heard, yet somehow, remember. You're brushing your teeth. And you pause, because something feels off. Not wrong, just different, like the world shifted just slightly when you weren't looking. That difference? It's real, because this isn't your first time here. Welcome to the precision reincarnation paradox, the idea that you've been reborn into the exact same life again and again. Not with new parents, not a new country, the same life, same name, same memories, but each time it's offset by a millisecond. And right now, you're on version 294,981. You live this life over and over, not by choice, not by punishment, but because of some deep cosmic recursion you can't escape. Each version slightly out of sync with the last. The change is too small to notice. A blink comes half a frame early. A thought surfaces a fraction too soon. And yet, those fractions compound. Over nearly 300,000 versions, that millisecond drift becomes meaningful. Tiny shifts in your timing change outcomes. You pick up the phone 1 second later. You speak a word just a beat sooner. You turn left instead of right. Not because you chose to, but because the timing of neurons firing in your brain has subtly evolved across lifetimes. That's why déjà vu hits you so hard. You're not imagining it. You remember, not from a dream, not from a vision, but from a previous iteration. A version of this moment that already happened. With different weather, different hesitation, same result. This isn't reincarnation as reward or punishment. It's precision reincarnation. A loop so refined, it replicates your entire existence, down to the breath. You are stuck in the echo of your own life. And the scariest part? You were meant to forget. But sometimes, you don't. Sometimes a fracture in the loop occurs, a misalignment, a deeper feeling of, I've done this before. You drop a cup you've never held. You say a sentence with perfect rhythm, as if reciting it. You meet someone for the first time, and your body trembles like it remembers pain that hasn't happened yet. These are loop echoes, ghosts of previous lives bleeding through the veil of precision. Why does it happen? Maybe the universe is trying to correct something. Maybe your life is a simulation, testing different branches of time, trying to find the version where you finally get it right. Or maybe the recursion has no end, no escape. You'll die and return again, with no choice, no control, just a forced restart. The paradox deepens. If you've lived this life 294,981 times, which version are you really? Are you the first? The latest? Or the sum of every mistake, every joy, every repetition compacted into a single evolving soul? You begin to wonder, how much of you is you? And how much is inherited from the past loops? The anger that comes too quickly, the dream that feels like prophecy, the fear that arrives without cause. Are these echoes or warnings? Remnants of pain that already played out in version 147,312. Triumphs you abandoned in version 200,457. Maybe your soul is scarred from lifetimes of trying, and maybe that's why you feel so tired, so restless. Not because of today, but because you've been here, again and again, trying to find the version where you can breathe. Maybe that's why you find yourself hesitating in moments that matter, because another version of you already made that decision, and it broke something. Maybe your fear isn't irrational at all. It's ancestral, loop-born, pain carried across milliseconds. And what about your talents, your instincts, the things you're mysteriously good at but never practiced? What if those are skills you refined in past iterations? Echoes of effort that never left you. A guitar riff remembered by muscle alone. A language that rolls off your tongue though you've never studied. These fragments are souvenirs from lives you can't remember. Each life adds to you and subtracts from you. Slight changes, compounding differences, like static in a repeating signal. Your identity is noise layered over centuries of yourself. But here's the cruel part of the paradox. You can never know how many loops it takes. Some of you broke hearts that didn't deserve it. Some of you sacrificed everything for someone who didn't stay. Some of you gave up. Some of you changed the world and never got to see it. And maybe, just maybe, this version is the one closest to breaking free. But freedom requires risk, not comfort, not patterns. You have to do the thing none of your past selves dared. You have to break character. What if the loop only ends when you stop being predictable? When you stop saying what you're expected to say, stop chasing the same validation, stop performing the same rituals that have kept you safely inside the recursion. Every loop offers a choice point, a moment where time holds its breath, where the universe watches to see if you'll finally do something different. And if you can catch that moment, if you can feel it tremble beneath your skin, then maybe, just maybe, you can break the pattern. So the next time you feel like time is folding, when that strange familiarity grips your spine and your breath catches for no reason at all, pay attention. That might be the fracture. That might be the universe giving you one last chance to diverge, to evolve, to escape the prison of precision. This might be the only life that matters, because this might be the version of you that finally wakes up. Empathy inversion test. What if every ounce of your pain wasn't pointless, but transactional? What if every time your heart broke, your body ached, or your spirit cracked, someone else healed? Not metaphorically, literally. Your suffering becomes the fuel for someone else's recovery. And not just anyone. What if it was your worst enemy? The idea seems absurd, maybe even cruel, but imagine a reality structured on balance, a cosmic ledger where agony isn't wasted, but redistributed. You fall, they rise, you bleed, they breathe easier, you cry yourself to sleep, and they awaken refreshed. Now, imagine learning this isn't fate or karma, it's a test, an experiment, the empathy inversion test. You were chosen. Why? Maybe you're resilient. Maybe you were always too empathetic, too soft, too willing to carry pain for others. Or maybe it's punishment. You don't know. What you do know is that every time you break, someone who's hurt you becomes a little more whole, and it starts slowly. First, a string of bad luck. A broken wrist, a missed promotion, a car crash. Meanwhile, your old bully wins a humanitarian award. The ex who humiliated you suddenly becomes a wellness coach. The friend who betrayed you lands their dream job. The world seems upside down until you realize it's not random, it's redistribution. At first, you try to ignore it. Maybe it's coincidence, but then patterns emerge. Each night you lie awake in torment, they post about newfound peace. You begin logging it. Date, pain, their progress. It aligns too perfectly to deny. And now, the unbearable truth, your suffering is their salvation. So what do? Do you stop fighting and let yourself erode so they can thrive? Do you try to reverse the process, become numb, detached, emotionally inert, just to break the loop? But that doesn't work. The test doesn't care about intent. It responds to genuine suffering. Only real pain transfers energy. And then comes the darker temptation, revenge. You think, if I hurt myself enough, maybe I can overdose their soul with healing, give them more than they can take, flood them until they drown in wellness. But the system has fail-safes. It knows when pain is poisoned by hate. That kind of suffering doesn't transfer. It just eats you alive. So you're left with a question that fractures your soul. Are you willing to suffer, truly suffer, for someone who wouldn't lift a finger for you? And worse, can you endure knowing that every moment you survive might be keeping someone else from their deathbed, even if they once wished death on you? This is the empathy inversion test. And it's not about fairness. It's about endurance. It's about forcing you to look into the eyes of your own suffering and ask, can I hold the pain? Not just for a stranger, but for someone I despise? There are no easy answers. But maybe that's the point, because as the days pass, something unexpected happens. You start to change, not in your pain, but in your perception. You begin to see the enemy not as untouchable, but as dependent. Their triumph is no longer your loss, it's your gift. You gave them that moment of peace, that second of joy, that breath. And in a way, that gives you control, not vengeance, power, not spite, understanding. You start to realize that the very person who destroyed you is being kept alive by you. And somehow, that knowledge doesn't destroy you, it rebuilds you. Because even though they took from you, now, you're the one giving. Not because you have to, but because you can. You transform pain into power, suffering into sovereignty, and the test doesn't end. But you pass it every day, you don't let it twist you into hate. You become the variable that can't be predicted, the one who gives, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And maybe that's what the universe was waiting for all along. You wonder, of course, why you? Why were you chosen to carry this invisible weight, while others float through life on the fragments of your pain? You weren't cruel. You didn't ask for revenge. But maybe it's not about choice. Maybe it's about design. Maybe your nervous system, your emotional bandwidth, your ability to break without vanishing, was exactly what the test required. You start seeing moments in your life differently. The scars that wouldn't heal, the relationships that left you in pieces, the hollow victories. You once thought you were just unlucky. But now, you understand? You were bleeding for someone else's rebirth. You start remembering things. The time you sobbed uncontrollably and felt lighter for no reason. Maybe someone you hated had fallen ill, and your breakdown kept them alive. Maybe the reason they walked out of the hospital that day, fully recovered, was because you collapsed in your bathroom without knowing why. What happens when pain becomes currency? When your body becomes a conduit for redemption, not yours, but someone else's? It makes you ask things no human should have to ask. If I feel happy, will they fall ill? If I numb myself completely, will they disappear? If I die, will they finally live forever? It tears at the very fabric of morality because you begin to hate your own healing. You begin to distrust your joy. What if, every time you smile, they edge closer to the edge? What if your peace is their punishment? And still, the test goes on. So you start experimenting. Meditation, starvation, isolation. You want to control the currency. You try to suffer just enough to help, but not so much that you dissolve. And it works, sometimes. But you realize there is no algorithm to this suffering, no manual. The only thing consistent is the test itself. Feel pain, give life. And in that equation, something sacred is born. A question so intimate, so haunting, it stays with you every hour. If I can carry the pain that saves the one who hurt me most, then what am I made of? And eventually, you realize, not weakness, but a kind of strength no one ever taught you to name. You are the healer in reverse, the savior no one applauds, the unseen donor of light to a world that left you in the dark. And when you finally meet them again, this enemy who unknowingly thrived off your agony, what will you say? Will you scream? Will you collapse? Or will you say nothing? Because you've already given them enough. That's when the test completes its final phase, not in pain, but in silence. In that breath between fury and forgiveness, where you choose, without words, to let go. Because the truest strength isn't in how much pain you endure, it's in how gracefully you bear what no one sees, and still refuse to become bitter. And maybe that's what the empathy inversion test is really about. Not saving your enemy, but discovering whether your soul is strong enough to remain yours, even when your pain serves someone else's redemption. Memory refill machine. Imagine a machine that can refill your memory, precisely, perfectly. Every detail you forgot, every feeling you lost, every faded name and moment, restored. Childhood, heartbreak, joy, trauma, all injected back into your mind like a download. Wouldn't that be a miracle? Or would it be a rewrite? This is the paradox of the memory refill machine, not science fiction, but an inevitability. Neurologists are already working on brain-computer interfaces, mapping memory engrams, and tracing how data moves through your neurons. The line between organic recollection and digital recall is blurring, and one day, a machine will be able to refill your memory. But here's the dilemma. When your memory returns, are you still the one who forgot? You see, memory isn't just a file. It's layered with meaning, altered by perception, shaped by time and emotion. The memory of a birthday isn't just the event, it's how you felt when you remembered it years later. It's the version you told your partner, your friend, your child. If a machine replaces all that with a pristine recording, you haven't remembered, you've been edited. Would you still feel nostalgia? Would you still ache for a lost moment? If that moment is now crystal clear, the blur was part of its beauty. The ache was part of its weight. With perfect memory, nothing fades, but also, nothing softens. Every mistake, every regret, returned in perfect clarity. Consider John, a stroke survivor who lost 5 years of memory. His wife volunteers for a trial that uploads a digital replica of those years into his hippocampus. After the implant, he recognizes her, remembers their son's birth, their fights, their reconciliation. But one night, he stares at her and says, "I know what we did, but I don't feel like I did it." He has the memories, but not the journey of remembering them. He has presence, without authorship. This is the terrifying truth. Memories aren't just data, they're identity anchors, and replacing them risks erasing the you that formed around those gaps. Your forgetfulness isn't a flaw, it's part of how your mind protects you, reshapes you, reinvents you. If we refill every blank, we may overwrite the very essence of who we've become. What if the machine lets you choose which memories to refill? Would you pick the happiest ones, the triumphs, the clarity of first love, or the pain you never wanted to forget because it taught you who you were? What if you chose to edit a memory, to remove the betrayal but keep the warmth, to erase the scream but leave the goodbye? Now you're not remembering, you're curating. And that's where the danger multiplies, because soon the memory refill machine becomes a personality editor, a past rewriter, a self-shaping illusion. And with each refill, each tweak, each fix, you move one step further from the truth of your lived experience. You become a copy, cleaner, sharper, but no longer flawed in the way that made you real. You become optimized, marketable, upgradable, replaceable. And if a better version of you can be programmed, what happens to the you who lived through the pain, the doubt, the failure? Are you still you if your memories were improved? Or are you now a narrative, a simulation of better choices you never made? This isn't far-off philosophy. Already, memory manipulation is being explored to treat PTSD, depression, addiction. Memory editing, using optogenetics, transcranial stimulation, and pharmacological blockers, is in trials. We're learning to enhance recall, suppress trauma, rewrite sequences. The memory refill machine isn't science fiction, it's a blueprint. So, what will you do when it arrives? Will you refill the memories you've lost, or accept the wisdom of forgetting? Will you chase the truth of your past, or the comfort of a cleaner one? Because the more we refill, the less we remain. Think of a painter who loses their sight. For years they struggle, adjust, create with memory and instinct. Then one day, sight returns, perfectly, artificially, through retinal implants connected to the memory machine. Suddenly they can see again. But their art changes, becomes precise, but empty. Because those years of blindness had forged a style, a rhythm, a meaning born from absence. The restoration gave them back their vision, but stole the identity born from losing it. Would you undo every scar if it meant losing the lessons they taught? Or imagine a child who loses both parents young. They grow up with fragments, faded memories, whispers of bedtime stories, the smell of their father's jacket. These fragments shape their resilience, their longing, their art. Then one day, the refill machine offers them everything. Perfect videos, immersive memories, sensory downloads. They take it. And suddenly, their grief fades. But so does their purpose. The ache that drove them to write, to build, to protect others, it vanishes. They are healed, but hollow. Can healing itself become a form of erasure? And what about identity theft? Not from an outside hacker, but from your own future self. If you back yourself up every year and refill a version from 10 years ago with this new data, which one is you? The one who lived through those years organically? Or the one who got the highlights in one night? Now, imagine governments using refill machines to correct criminals, or corporations offering memory upgrades as subscription services. Who decides which memories are real? Who owns your past? You begin to see the terrifying potential. A world of humans who no longer remember the same history, who choose versions of the past based on convenience, who forget what forgetting feels like. So, when the machine hums to life and offers you the chance to become whole again, think carefully. Because maybe your cracks are not errors. Maybe your amnesia is not a bug. Maybe what makes you you is the beautiful, tragic, imperfect way you forget. And to refill all of that might just be the way you lose everything. And one day, you may look in the mirror and see the perfect sum of your memories, refilled, restored, edited. But the soul behind those eyes might whisper, I remember everything, but I don't know who I am. The fog of possible selves. Imagine stepping into a sleek silver pod, no bigger than a phone booth, humming with energy. You sit down, press your hand to a glowing panel, and in the blink of an eye, it's done. Your memories are restored, but not just restored, improved, enhanced. The sadness in that childhood memory, softened. The humiliation of your worst mistake, removed. The trauma, filtered like noise from a song. You remember everything, but now it's bearable. But then the real question hits you. Are you still you? This is the paradox of the memory refill machine, a device that can refill, rewrite, and repair your past, pixel by pixel. What if science offered you a better version of your memory? Not a lie, not fiction, just an optimized cut. Would you take it? Let's start with the basics. Memory isn't a fixed recording. It's fluid, unreliable, and shaped more by emotion than fact. Neuroscientists have proven this. Every time we recall a memory, we risk altering it. The act of remembering is, ironically, an act of rewriting. So what if a machine simply did what your brain already does, only cleaner, safer, and intentionally? But that opens the gate to something more dangerous. identity distortion. If your memory defines your choices and your choices define you, then altering memory is altering identity. It's not that you become someone else, it's that you become a version of yourself that never lived those darker days, a sanitized self, a curated consciousness. Consider this scenario. A war veteran uses the machine to remove the memory of what he did, what he saw. On paper, he's free. But when he looks in the mirror, there's a hollowness, a gap. His body remembers things his mind cannot explain. His reactions become mismatched to his memories. He flinches at fireworks with no idea why. He cries during a sunset for reasons he can't articulate. Because while the machine can alter memory, it cannot silence the body's archive. Or think of a widow who erases the moment she heard her partner had died. The grief fades, the sorrow numbs, but love without grief becomes fiction. What does it mean to say, "I love them," if you no longer carry the memory of loss? Does the love remain real, or is it now a performance? The memory refill machine tempts us with perfection. You could refill the blanks in your childhood, understand the words your father never said, revisit your first love without the breakup, experience joy without cost. But that's not memory. That's fantasy. Because real memory is flawed. It has sharp edges. It hurts sometimes. But that pain is what teaches us. That regret is what changes us. That loss, that unbearable ache, is what gives love its weight. Now, imagine a society where memory refills become common. Employers erase burnout, couples wipe fights, students refill test answers. In time, no one remembers failure. No one learns resilience. No one grows. Because to evolve, you need the friction of truth, the scars of experience. And what happens when someone edits your memory without consent? A parent who rewrites your childhood. A government that refills your memory of protests with images of peace. How would you know what's real? How could you trust your past when your own mind becomes a stage for someone else's narrative? There's another layer. What if someone recreated you from your refilled memories? A perfect clone, programmed with your voice, your mannerisms, your laugh. But they never lived through the suffering. They never cried in the dark. They don't feel the weight of your journey. Are they really you, or just a photocopy with better lighting? And if you chose to become that copy yourself, if you refilled every painful moment, would you still be capable of empathy? Would you still understand others who suffer if you've erased your own? Here's the final twist. The machine doesn't just delete the bad, it rewrites the meaning of the good. Without context, joy becomes shallow. Without pain, gratitude fades. Without memory of the fall, the triumph is hollow. The memory refill machine offers a version of you that is polished, painless, perfected, but also detached, disoriented, and diluted. Because you are not just a sum of what you remember. You are also the echoes of what you try to forget. The moments that haunt you. The truths you face every day. So, when you ask, would I still be me? Remember, identity isn't found in perfection. It's found in the struggle, in the gaps, in the imperfect, raw, unedited reel of everything you've endured. Because being human isn't about remembering everything right. It's about surviving what you wish you could forget, and becoming someone braver because of it. Let's go deeper. What if, one day, you no longer knew which memories were truly yours? You're standing in your childhood kitchen, but the wallpaper is a different color. You remember your mother humming a lullaby that never existed. Your father's voice, now deeper, calmer, more kind than he ever was. The memory refill machine didn't just restore your past, it rebranded it. The illusion of healing becomes a prison of performance, because to interact with the world, you now rely on a history written by someone else, or worse, by yourself in a moment of weakness. And that new history dictates new behaviors. You smile when you should ache. You forgive without remembering why you needed to. And here's the most terrifying part. You begin to prefer the edited version. You want to live in the lie. This isn't fiction. Research on memory implantation shows how shockingly easy it is to give people false memories that they will defend with emotional conviction. With the right cues, people can remember being lost in a mall, petting a non-existent dog, or even witnessing a crime that never happened. The brain is malleable. It wants coherence, and coherence can be crafted. Now, imagine corporations weaponizing this. A company installs a refill machine in every employee lounge. You no longer remember burnout, no longer resent your job. Productivity spikes, but so does dependency. They own your peace, and you've lost your right to remember why you ever felt otherwise. You'd become an actor in your own life story, reading from a script you didn't write. That's the cost of the memory refill machine. It doesn't erase your past, it rewrites your soul. Countdown to forgotten. What if your name had a countdown? Not your age, not your death, just your name, the sound of it, the echo of it in someone else's voice. What if every time someone said it, the timer reset? But if too much time passed, if no one spoke it, wrote it, remembered it, the timer would expire. And when it hit zero, you wouldn't die. You'd disappear. From memory. From photographs. From history. Not a supernatural curse, not magic. Just a hidden mechanism of the mind, of reality, that tracks the currency of remembrance. We assume memory fades slowly, years after we're gone. But what if the process is far crueler? Instant. Total. What if you could live an entire life, make a difference, love, laugh, suffer, and the moment your name expired, it's as if none of it ever happened. They call it the countdown to forgotten. Think of the people you haven't thought about in years. A classmate from third grade, a bus driver who smiled at you once, a stranger who helped you when you were lost. Where are they now? What were their names? Can you even picture their faces? Maybe you've already forgotten them. Maybe their countdown hit zero. And maybe someone else is holding yours in their hands right now. This theory isn't entirely fiction. In psychology, there's something called semantic memory decay, our long-term memory of meanings, names, and concepts. It fades if not reinforced. But beyond biology, there's something deeper, cultural erasure. A person forgotten by society is, for all functional purposes, erased. We see this in unmarked graves, missing persons cases, orphaned legacies. Memory isn't permanent, it's fragile, it's rented. Now, imagine there's an unseen algorithm governing this, a metaphysical ledger that tracks every time your name is said, thought, or felt. Each utterance buys you more time. Each moment of silence pushes you closer to zero. And here's the horror. The countdown doesn't start after death. It starts the moment you're born. Every person you meet becomes a timekeeper. If they remember you, speak of you, write about you, your clock stretches. But if they stop, if they forget, your time shrinks. Eventually, your name crosses a threshold and erasure begins. People don't just forget your birthday. They forget your presence. Conversations where you spoke start to feel one-sided. And group photos look wrong, like someone's missing. But they can't say who. And worst of all, you begin to feel it too. At first, it's subtle. You walk into a room and people hesitate before greeting you. Emails addressed to you are sent, then retracted. You find objects you remember owning, but no one knows they're yours. It escalates. Birth certificates vanish. School records glitch. Your digital footprint fades. Search engines yield nothing. You try to reconnect, but everyone swears they've never met you. It's not paranoia, it's deletion. A person isn't just skin and thought. A person is a network of memory, of association, of impact. If all those threads sever, what remains? Just biology, just a shell. No stories, no connections. You become, effectively, unreal. But there's an even darker layer. Some people believe the countdown is global, collective. That humanity subconsciously decides who deserves to be remembered. Those who make enough noise, artists, tyrants, martyrs, get remembered longer. But those who live quiet, beautiful lives, who were kind but not loud, their clocks tick fastest, and it's not fair. A person who saves a stranger might vanish, while a scandal-embroiled celebrity stays etched into the culture for decades. Memory isn't moral, it's viral. So what can you do? Shout your name into the void? Write it on walls? Beg others to repeat it? Maybe. But maybe the real challenge is to leave a kind of memory that doesn't need your name. A presence, a feeling. A shift in someone's life that lingers, even if they forget who caused it. Maybe the deepest form of immortality is anonymous, beyond names, beyond labels. And yet, you still hope someone remembers, because when that last timer runs out, when the final person who knew you forgets, there's a silence, a collapse. And in that instant, the universe reclaims your story. You were a spark, brief, bright, then gone. Unless Unless someone, somewhere, speaks your name one last time, not out of obligation, but because something you did mattered. They whisper it, alone, and your clock resets, even for a moment. That is the hope buried inside the countdown to forgotten. So remember someone today. Say their name. Write it down. Tell their story. Because in this world, perhaps the only way to be eternal is to be remembered, not forever, just long enough to pass the memory on. That's all anyone really wants, to be remembered well, and to know that when the clock runs out, they existed. There is no monument more powerful than a memory passed down. So speak gently of those you've lost. Let their names echo once more, not just to honor them, but to reset their clock, if only for a breath. Because if no one speaks your name, then not even the stars will know you were here. Auto-delete after exit. You die, not in some grand cinematic way, not with fireworks or fanfare, just silence, a final breath, a stillness, and then nothing. But what happens next isn't spiritual. It isn't mythological. It's far more terrifying. Because as soon as your life ends, something else begins. The deletion. Not just your body, but your proof. Photos vanish from servers. Messages dissolve mid-text. Your name fades from lists, your face from feeds, even the sound of your voice. Recordings, voicemails, echoes, erased. Not by people, not by time, by a system you never knew existed. A code buried beneath reality itself. A cleanup protocol so precise it doesn't just erase you, it erases the idea of you. This is the auto-delete after exit, a phenomenon or perhaps a design in which every trace of you disappears upon your death. Files, memories, mentions, gone, not over years, instantly, like you never mattered, like you were never here. At first, it sounds like a metaphor, but the deeper you go, the darker it gets. Imagine your loved ones waking up one day with an inexplicable emptiness. They feel something missing but can't name it, a hole in their history. They don't grieve you, not because they don't care, but because they don't remember what they lost. You've been cut from their neural archive, a surgical extraction of presence. Your best friend walks past the place you first met and feels nothing. Your partner stares at a space in bed that was always filled, but can't recall by whom. Your mother looks at family photos, your spot is blank. You weren't removed from life. You were overwritten. Every system you interacted with rewrites itself. Emails you sent never arrived. Documents you authored never existed. Even your digital footprints are scrubbed. Your username becomes a string of numbers. Your posts become orphaned data. Comments you made on other people's pages show up as unknown user, if at all. But the most horrifying part? It's not limited to digital records. Human memory follows the same rules. Your name becomes a word no one says, because no one remembers it. The laughter you shared fades from echo to silence. The emotions you stirred in others evaporate like a dream upon waking. You are not mourned. You are unmade. There are stories, half remembered by those who still question their own sanity. People who feel like they knew someone, but can't recall who. A neighbor they always waved to, yet can't name. A voice they can almost hear, but not quite. They chalk it up to stress, to time, to a trick of the mind. It's not. It's deletion lag. Sometimes a delay occurs. A fragment survives longer than it should. A photo that won't open, a voice in a dream, a name that flashes across a corrupted file. But it never lasts. The system catches up. The anomaly is patched. The universe heals the glitch. You are erased with such precision, it's like you were a bug in the code of reality. Why? Maybe you were never meant to persist. Maybe this reality is a sandbox and you're a test process. Once your simulation ends, so does your data. Or maybe it's a fail-safe to keep memory clean, to keep the living from obsessing over the dead, a way to prevent grief from corrupting function. But maybe it's punishment. Maybe someone or something is keeping score. And when you die, your score determines your legacy. If you mattered enough, if you moved enough hearts, changed enough lives, left an imprint deep enough, you resist deletion. Your name survives in stories. Your image remains on walls. Your essence echoes in dreams. But if not, the protocol engages. Auto-delete. no marker, no trace, no rest in peace. Only silence. So, now you ask, what can you do? How do you fight a deletion you won't even be aware of? You make yourself unforgettable, not by fame, not by followers, but by impact. You burn so brightly in the minds of others that your memory becomes part of their identity. You speak truths that become impossible to untell. You love so deeply, so fiercely, that even the system pauses, unsure if it has the right to erase you. You anchor yourself in the world in ways data can't touch. Because if everything else can be wiped, what remains is what you leave in people, not around them. Be the word they repeat. Be the silence they notice. Be the line they remember when they're about to give up. That's how you win. Not by living forever, but by making your exit so loud that deletion feels like theft. So when your time comes and the system begins its silent sweep, it will pause, and it will fail. Because some people can't be erased. And if you live right, truly, deeply, you'll be one of them. What if this is why some people are obsessed with legacy? What if the hunger for remembrance isn't vanity, but instinct? A desperate, unconscious resistance against the deletion protocol. Somewhere deep inside, you might already know that if you don't do something worth remembering, you'll be wiped clean from the universe's memory core. It changes how you view regret. It makes you rethink forgiveness. Every act of love becomes resistance. Every connection a tether. Every person you affect is a backup system holding on to your presence. And maybe that's the glitch no protocol can solve. Love. Because love writes itself in places beyond code, in the subconscious, in the dreams people don't understand, in the moments they pause without knowing why. You become part of their breath, part of their unexplainable ache. And even if your name vanishes, the feeling of you survives. Maybe that's the loophole. Maybe that's the point. Not to live forever, but to live in such a way that even if the world forgets your name, the people in it remember your effect. They feel your voice in their silence, your courage in their choices, your kindness in their healing. So in the end, you don't need a statue. You need to plant something that grows long after you're gone, inside people, not just around them. Because when deletion comes, and it will come, your only defense is to have become unforgettable in the places that matter most. Not online, not in history books, but in the hearts you left warmer than you found them. That's the code they can't rewrite. That's the you they can't delete. Stopped time observer. What if you woke up one morning and the world had stopped? Not slowed, stopped. Every person frozen in mid-movement, birds mid-flight, rain suspended in air, conversations paused with open mouths. And you're the only one still moving, breathing, thinking. You shout, but no one responds. You shake shoulders, throw glasses, slam doors, nothing. Not a twitch, not a blink. They're statues, perfect replicas of life, without life. At first, it feels like a gift. No more pressure, no more schedules, no more obligations. Just you, the world, and infinite freedom. But then, something terrifying happens. You realize you're invisible, not in the literal sense. Mirrors still show your reflection. But functionally, you're a ghost. You scream, but no one hears. You cry, but no one comforts. You exist, but only to yourself. You eat food that doesn't rot. Walk through streets that never change. Hours pass, then days, then weeks. You memorize faces frozen in time. A man eternally reaching for a subway pole. A child caught mid-laugh. They become your landmarks, your companions. You start giving them names, inventing stories for who they were, who they could have been. You start narrating their thoughts, giving them emotions, motivations, flaws, not because you believe they're real anymore, but because you need to believe someone else once was. Then comes the dread. You wonder, did time really stop for them or speed up for you? Are you ahead, behind? Or did something break inside you, something so deeply fractured that reality split in protest, leaving you behind as punishment or proof? That's when you begin the experiments. You rearrange items, spill water, open umbrellas indoors. Day after day, you shift the world around these frozen figures, trying to provoke a reaction. Some twitch, some breath, a shiver. Nothing. You try more. Fire alarms, sirens, slaps. You cross moral lines, not out of cruelty, but desperation. Still nothing. Eventually you break, not into rage, into stillness. The irony hits hard. You are the only one who moves, but the only one who can't affect anything. You have all the time in the world, and none of it matters. You live without consequences, but also without witnesses, and that is a kind of hell. So you change tactics. You start writing. Journals, manifestos, paintings on abandoned walls. You speak to the next you, the next version of this person left behind, hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone will read your thoughts in another cycle. Maybe this has happened before. Maybe this is a loop, and you're just the current runner in an infinite relay of isolation. You try to escape. Planes won't fly. Cars won't start. Power stays on, but never flickers. No new sunrises, no new winds. The seasons are stuck in a single inhale. You walk farther and farther each day, searching for the boundary. Some edge, a seam, a glitch. There's none. You return to the same spot, the same people, the same faces. And then you realize you've changed. You've grown older. Your hair has shifted. Your eyes look different. But the world hasn't. You are aging. They are not. The clock ticks only for you. That's when the horror settles in. This isn't temporary. This is the rest of your life. You stop moving for days, lie on a bench, talk to pigeons that don't fly, watch a leaf frozen mid-tumble. You become a ghost with a heartbeat, a relic of motion in a world paused mid-breath. Until one day, a sound, soft, faint, but there, a ripple in the stillness, a blink, a shiver, a finger twitches. You freeze, not with fear, with hope. You run to the sound, but there's no one, only evidence. A spoon has fallen, a chair has moved an inch. It's not you. Someone else is moving, someone else is awake. You wait. Nothing happens for days. Then, a word, whispered on wind that shouldn't exist. You spin, nothing. But now you know you are not alone. Maybe you never were. Maybe someone was watching you the entire time, just as frozen, just as silent, just as desperate. And now, they've found you. Or maybe you've reached the next phase of the test, because this isn't a punishment, it's an observation, a study of the soul in isolation. What happens when you take everything from a person, society, consequences, validation, connection, and leave them only with themselves? Do they break, or do they build? You don't know how long you've been here. Time has no shape now, but you feel it. A shift. The slightest crack in the wall of stillness. And with that sliver of motion, you smile. Not because you're free, but because for the first time in forever, you're seen. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point all along. And so, you begin to speak again, not to them, but to yourself, to the air, to the silence. You whisper your name into the stillness just to remember who you are. You recite poems you thought you'd forgotten. You hum songs only you can hear. And in those moments, it no longer matters that the world is frozen, because you have thawed. And in that thawing, you begin to create. You build sculptures from frozen leaves. You write epic tales on the pavement with chalk. You draw faces over mannequin stairs, breathing emotion into their blank gazes. You dance through streets to music that only lives inside you. You make the world yours, not because anyone is watching, but because creation is its own kind of rebellion. And then, one day, while sketching hope into a stranger's paused expression, you feel it. Heat. The warmth of another breath not your own. You don't move. You don't look. You just let the tears fall, not out of sorrow, but relief. Because finally, after all this time, you are not alone in motion. You never were. And the test, whatever it was, is no longer about survival. It's about connection. Even in a world that forgot to move, you remembered how.